Is it because I cried till I fell? That you don't believe me when I say I heard it? Is it because you think I forgave you? I'm just pretending 'cause I'm hoping we'll get through this. I might be mad in love with you, even hide all the pain that I've been through, but I'm still hurting, holding on to the fear of losing you. I'm taking my heart, it's all I have. I'm more than enough to love myself. It's been hard to accept that seasons change and feelings fade. So all I ask, don't call me. Is it because I don't love my body that you make me feel like you're the only one that loves me? Is it because you're my mother's favorite, that when I don't text you back, you call it to get me? I might be mad in love with you, even hide all the pain in front of you, but I'm still hurting, holding on to the fear of losing you. I'm taking my heart, it's all I have. I'm more than enough to love myself. It's been hard to accept that seasons change and feelings fade. So all I ask, don't call me. I'm taking my heart, it's all I have. I'm more than enough to love myself. It's been hard to accept that seasons change and feelings fade. 'Cause I ask, don't call me. All I have, don't call me.
Been traveling these wide roads for so long. My heart's been far from you, 10,000 miles gone. Oh, I wanna come near and give you every part of me, but there's blood on my hands and my lips are unclean. In my darkness I remember Mama's words reoccur to me. Surrender to the good Lord and to wipe your slate clean. Take me to your river. I wanna go. Oh, go. Take me to your river. I wanna know. Dip me in your smooth waters. I go in as a man with many crowns. Come up for air as my sins flow down the Jordan. Oh, I wanna come here and give you every part of me, but there's blood on my hands and my lips are unclean. Take me to your river. I wanna go. Oh, go. Take me to your river. I wanna know.
Wanna go, wanna go, wanna go. I wanna know, wanna know, wanna know. Wanna go, wanna go, wanna go. Wanna know, wanna know, wanna know. Wanna go, wanna go, wanna go. Wanna know, wanna know, wanna know.
Ooh, oh, take me to your river. I wanna go. Lord, please let me know. Take me to your river. I wanna know.
People not only have to be re-educated to the importance of supporting black business, but the black man himself has to be made aware of the importance of going into business. And once you and I go into business, we own and operate at least the businesses in our community. What we will be doing is developing a situation wherein we will actually be able to create employment for the people in the community. And once you can create some employment in the community where you live, it will eliminate the necessity of you and me having to act ignorantly and disgracefully, boycotting and picketing some cracker someplace else, trying to beg him for a job.
Black on everything, nigga. Drop bricks, Tulsa. Kingsley. It's a brand, you know. Black on everything, take a glance, you know. You can see it on my shirt, on my pants, you know. Had to make these motherfuckers understand, you know. I'm just saying it's about time we expand, you know. Take a stand, you know. Make demands, you know. Take a chance, you know. Black on everything by the fam, you know. I put that on everything that I am, you know.
You know the saying, if you knew better, you'll do better. A lot of people ain't make it from where we came from, where it's too clever. Youngin' learns how to plant down on its own seeds, not a fruit better. Translation, you can only dumb your sound down if you let them do better. I'm the product of my poverty. Mama never owned property. The eviction notice landlord's game, that's the first form of monopoly. Found out I was indigenous to America, was a shock to me. Time to get my aboriginal Americans out of poverty. Time to get it for real. Yup, we ain't gon' play no games with them. Linked up with some real hitters, that's where I'm from with the same vision. Tulsa, OK, Greenwood, we gon' make it happen again. Aboriginal Wall Street for my ancestors, we gon' make amends.
It's a brand, you know, black on everything, take a glance, you know. You can see it on my shirt, on my pants, you know. Had to make these motherfuckers understand, you know. I'm just saying it's about time we expand, you know. Take a stand, you know. Make amends, you know. Take a chance, you know. Black on everything by the fam, you know. I put that on everything that I am, you know. I done built your walls, I done paid your fines, I done made you rich while I'm barely getting by. I done slaved away at your heart's desires, had to take it all away for a piece of mind. Taking back my cream and my dreams, Carbon King, fuck you mean, hidden agendas that you never seen, like one of the fuckers of COVID-19. Make us sick, they force vaccines, but we not trying to take no strings. Boost up black man self-esteem, no they not trying to see that scene. Cops blaming at us again, no more shaking hands. Black man with a master plan, they fear who I am. Trying to hide my identity, but I know where I stand. Grinding for me and the fam, reborn and do it again. It's a brand, you know, black on everything, take a glance, you know. You can see it on my shirt, on my pants, you know. Had to make these motherfuckers understand, you know. I'm just saying it's about time we expand, you know. Black on everything, take a glance, you know. You can see it on my shirt, on my pants, you know. Had to make these motherfuckers understand, you know. I'm saying it's about time we expand, you know. Take a stand, you know. Make demands, you know. Take a chance, you know. Black on everything for the fam, you know. I put that on everything that I am, you know. Take a stand, you know. Make amends, you know. Take a chance, you know. Fuck it, expand, you know. Black on everything for the fam, you know. I put that on everything that I am, you know.
Our hearts forever. Rest in peace, Dick Rowland. Rest in peace, Jimmy, Lily Franklin. And all the survivors. Shout out to all our ancestors, man. We coming back for everything that they stole. Let's get it.
Yup. Wild Indian, yeah.
Hey, V, line them up.
I'm a wild Indian, you know I go crazy. Ain't really Indian, that boy fugazi. I just keep it player, you can never play me. You got an ass so fat, girl, let's make a baby. And another one. Then I'm back to the trap, I'm trying to double some. She a bad woke chick and I love her tongue. We some jurisdiction boys, we some one-on-ones. Look, don't compare me to no Martin dog, I'm like Malcolm X. Die about our freedom, we'll leave a crack and stretch. Round of applause, boy, you know we clapping text. Chucky dog, child play, yeah, nigga, that's what's next. Open up the cans just like Arizona. Pull up masked up like we got the Rona. We set up jurisdictions when we bought a corner. How you claiming that's your hood and you not the owner? Be the B, I just pulled up in the need for speed. Free the land, tell the colonizers that they need to leave. Wild Indian up in my veins, you know how we bleed. You ain't gotta lie about who we is, dog, just keep it G. We at war, we can't keep the peace. Since we at war, gotta keep the peace. Whack a cone, then I meditate. Should I need to breathe? Keep a Olmec head when we slide, dog, cause we the shit.
Like my niggas said, bitch, we the sheets. I can't keep the peace. If it pop off, then I want a piece. I'm just on release. I'm in go mode, motherfuck the thieves. In these streets like EBT, when we at war, make peace with me. I don't give a damn, understand. Fuck who stole this land, white or black or tan. Understand, it's fuck who stole this land. Might've seen me get little buddy these hands. He wasn't no abo man. A lot of these dudes is Sambo man. They full of shit like my ammo can. What they call an N-word out the wrong mouth as an ambulance. Wild Indian, get it in advance, or you can post date it. Ask around, I'm the most hated. Straight sacred, they stole acreage. Go ape shit, show ain't shit. It won't be televised, I don't tape shit.
Be the B, I just pulled up in the need for speed. Free the land, tell the colonizers that they need to leave. Wild Indian up in my veins, you know how we bleed. You ain't gotta lie about who we is, dog, just keep it G. We at war, we can't keep the peace. Since we at war, gotta keep the peace. Whack a cone, then I meditate. Should I need to breathe? Keep a Olmec head when we slide, dog, cause we the sheep.
Infamous Trail Lee.
Triple D pick, bro, you ain't scared about the shit you be talking about.
Fuck all that talking, I'm with it. Talk about business. Deep but just started, I finished. They said that I'm black, bitch, I'm engine. Fuck your Thanksgiving. Shoot at these races for Christmas. I ain't got no time for no limits. Bitch, I see murder, I'm there for my niggas. Master the pews with no just times of pictures. Came back for my pyramids, free my Egyptians. Disrespect my cook, they ass in a pot. Someone else.
Yeah. It's been a long time coming. But we here. Choose a side, you go against me, that's like suicide. Sometimes just to find the truth, you gotta lose your mind. Using time to my advantage, I understand that everything's manifested in the way that I planned it. I'm still standing when the smoke clears. Blood, sweat, and no tears. I came from the bottom where nobody know what hope is. They ain't freeing themselves or achieving their wealth. So if they don't support me, they don't believe in themselves. Life's a reflection. You get the message, it's introspective. So if you search for hell or heaven, it's all connected in your brain. All kind of spirits live on this plane. Some are bad, some are good. Which ones you gon' entertain? Crown legacy, the gang. I put my heart in this set. Racists hate our skin tones, they look at dark as a threat. That's why these hateful motherfuckers keep their palms on our necks. How wolves skin of bronze, bitch, we God in the flesh. Just follow the text. It's time to reveal revelation. We still being hated and we still separated. We built the whole nation, but ain't get no reparations. Well, fuck a handout, if you want it, you better take it. This matrix been to enslave us, kill us, lock us in cages. We gotta move through these mazes, nobody coming to save us. Take off your chains, everything you ever knew was ours. Like Langston Hughes, like Huey Newton, yeah, you was power. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Take your shit back. Yeah, take off your chains, everything you ever knew was ours. Like Langston Hughes, like Huey Newton, yeah, you was power. A true king born to rise from an infant. I do it for the lives that done died in the system. There's war outside for your mind and your spirit. Whatever's televised, telling lies to your vision. I'm indigenous, God body, strong and militant. And my squad is infamous, we calm but diligent. Immortal in combat, so it's hard to finish him. He's powerful, you gotta be a god to sit with him. I'm tapped in, my vessel's a voice for the ancestors from back then who wanted the world to demand better. I put my pen to the pad, start spitting what's real, and when I speak, that shit be giving them chills. I gotta tell you about your power, time to soak up your knowledge so you unlock it and rise like the sun. We pushing past the horizon. They watching from the side, but they don't wanna collide, cause who can stop us? Nobody, nigga. Nobody, straight heavyweights. These bronze bombers gon' detonate when we elevate from hell's kitchen to heaven's gate. We fighting hard times, dog, so let me set it straight. You ain't got a strong mind, the nigga will resonate. I don't feel cowards. Your willpower is your real power. We've been building they dreams so long, it's time to build ours. Cause shit won't change if we all stay the same. So if it all falls down, we should all take the blame, nigga. I seen the pain, I done witnessed the flaws. So if you don't pay attention, you won't get what you are. My spiritual energy was sent from the stars. Now bitch, I'm live from the temple of God, incarnated.
Taxes in a check, put them taxes in the hood, we don't fuck with the IRS. You don't press your own con, but you show the cop respect. Same one locked up your homie, but you scared to get him back. Man, go get him back in blood. All them bodies that you got, the KKK and catch a slug. Fuck a free my homie Asada shit, go get him back in blood. Yeah, you know who locked your homie up, go get him back in blood. If George Zimmerman ain't dead, I don't wanna hear about how you tough. Claim you a shooter when the cops come, you run and toss your gun. While we aiming at each other when we got a bigger war. Niggas musta forgot what this gang banging really for. cash, we don't do taxes in a check. Put them taxes in the hood, we don't fuck with the IRS. You oppress your own kind, but you show the cop respect. Same one locked up your homie, but you scared to get him back. Man, go get him back in blood. All them bodies that you got, the KKK and catch a slug. Fuck a free my homie Asada shit, go get him back in blood. Yeah, you know who locked your homie up, go get him back in blood. If George Zimmerman ain't dead, I don't wanna hear about how you tough. Claim you a shooter when the cops come, you run and toss your gun. While we aiming at each other when we got a bigger war. Niggas musta forgot what this gang banging really for. Man, you niggas really lost. If you don't own your own land, stop walking around like you a boss. Rappers giving bread to charity, go do some shit for real. All that gangster shit you talking, get raped when you take a deal. Man, you niggas ain't on shit. You my brother cause we black, I don't care if you blood or crip. If you don't own your own hood, stop talking gangster, you ain't nip. The rap execs invest in prisons, then use us to fill them shit. Dog, I make my own cash, we don't do taxes in a check. Put them taxes in the hood, we don't fuck with the IRS. You oppress your own kind, but you show the cop respect. Same one locked up your homie, but you scared to get him back. Man, go get him back in blood. All them bodies that you got, the KKK and catch a slug. Fuck a free my homie Asada shit, go get him back in blood. Yeah, you know who locked your homie up, go get him back in blood. Niggas know who locked their homie up, man. Know what I'm saying? This time we, you know what I'm saying? I ain't saying put the guns down, I'm saying we need to change targets, my nigga. You feel me? We aiming at the wrong people. All my aboriginals tribe up, man. Y'all already know how we give it up. And if you don't know what an aboriginal is, tap in. Word. Yeah, you know who locked your homie up, go get him back in blood.
Current to the house, in the building. Young money. Current to the house, in the building. Young money, we a bunch of fly children.
What the fuck they keep fucking with shit? They got the same track up here twice. Why would they do that? What's up, Tribe? Top of the morning. Balance of the evening. Shout out to all the American Aborigines. Chief figures in the building. Aboriginal TV. Fucking building. We got 61 people in the building. I appreciate if y'all bang that like button for me. Share the video out one time. Get some shout outs. What's up, gang? We got Low in the building. St. Louis in the motherfucking building. Valley in the building. What's up, gang? My brother Marcus Adamu in the building. Casey Featherhead in the building. Auntie's in the building. Angela's in the building. 203 Low Gang. Darius Matthews in the motherfucking building. Divins Clan, the realest N-word alive in the motherfucking building. Black Wild Indian, Luana Hedge, Pav, Cash, House Greatest. Stephanie Burke, Copper Hugh, Chippewa. Soulfully sowing seeds. I see my brother Adox in here. James in the building. Craig Lloyd in the motherfucking building. Platinum Backs in the building. A rising Aboriginal. What's up, Trump? Adrian Sadiq in the building. Texas in every way. What's up with it? Sunshine in the building. What's good? Got 62 people in here. Get y'all to bang that like button. Share the video. Kanye West, Cahokia, Giants, Pyramids, and the old world Negroes. Y'all might want to let niggas know what time it is. I'ma let my boys do their thing. Hold on. You know we gotta let our boys do their thing. Where they okay. Y'all ready? All right, let's go ahead and let our African brothers and sisters lead us in the opening ceremonies.
Current to the house, in the the building. Young money, we a bunch of fly children. I'm just trying to make them all happy.
Ride, live, get on up, get on up, get on up, ride, live, ride, live, get on up, get on up, get on up, forward Mars. Y'all niggas ain't ready. All these 350 my Chevy, 24 shelf top, rainbow down. Get some bill like I was Malcolm X. One itself, similar boot, exposing all these leather gloves. Ski mask on with a tiny top and the ammunition to start the war. M-I-L-I-K, about fate, third time to the real. Nobody move till I say, be ready to ride, don't need to cry. Hold out niggas ain't scared to die. Cause down here, we had a thing. A-T-L-A-N-T-A-T-A, that's why I stay Mars. Ride, live, get on up, get on up, get on up, ride, live, ride, live, get on up, get on up, get on up, forward Mars. On the ground, hand in mind, and that shit till my die day. Keep it real, keep it trill, never kept me with that. That's right, got me roll, it's why I trap, putting in work like a 9-to-5. They ain't tight, they won't right, all my truth, they true like T-I-Z, A to the T, 2-D-E, up that me, B-A-P, E to the R, C-H-A-S to the E, and dash it to my D to the Y, I-G, D-A-Y, now get to gas, and get on up, and come on and join my infantry. Live, ride, live, get on up, get on up, get on up, ride, live, ride, live, get on up, get on up, get on up, forward Mars. A-T-M-A-N-T-A-T-A, that's where I'm S-T-A, start until my seat to the Y-I-C-D-A, start back to the A-T-L-A-N-T-A-T-A, that's the mouth, I-S-T-A-Y, on to the mouth, D to the Y-I-N-T, southbound to the motherfucking mouth, forward Mars. Live, ride, live, get on up, get on up, get on up, ride, live, ride, live, get on up, get on up, get on up, forward Mars. Live, give me this step, live, give me this step, live, give me this step, give me this step, give me this step, live, give me this step, live, give me this step, live, give me this step, give me this step, forward guys. One, a man too silently said with 3 grenades, my 4-5 the bus ass. Sit around, come a drill with this, sell more for the boss stuff. Suit 8 times in the field with truth. Now taking for your losing life. Seen automatic fire rappers. Now get on up, get on up, get on up. Ride, live, get on up, get on up, get on up, ride, live, ride, live, get on up, get on up, get on up, ride, live, ride, live, get on up, get on up, get on up, forward Mars.
All right, tribe. Got 70 people in the motherfucking building. I see ethnic studies in the building. So try. Keep Cobbs, Ichi gang in the motherfucking building. So gang. King Ichi in the building. Exiting the paradigm. T Malkia is in the motherfucking. Glad to have y'all present. Fire that show. I got a banger. What's up, St. Louis? Hey. 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 All right, drop. Top of the morning, balance of the evening. Hope everybody's doing well. Kanye West, Cahokia, Giants, Pyramids, and the old world Negroes. We're going to piggyback off of just chopping up yesterday and continue down our journey. I just want to, give thanks to the ancestors as always. Give thanks for y'all present. We appreciate everybody. So we talked about Cahokia, how it was an open air university. Shout out to everybody who are subscribers to DVDstore.shop. Got that document absolutely free as a part of your subscription. Shout out for everybody who went ahead and dropped that little $1 to get access to that document. For everybody who did grab it, I did send you, both parts of it so you can have it without the pictures. I would like to add the proper reference. Research Tribe. Shout out to everybody who did grab it. If you are interested, it is on my community page. Let's see. So, there was a previous civilization. I think that's it. Now, we're trying to figure out who this civilization was. What are some of their attributes? What was their culture like? What did they look like? It's amazing how you niggas in your history all was a race prior to the Europeans. And at the same time, these megalithic structures and the technology of how to build them was lost as well. The knowledge to build, the culture, the language. Kind of seems like it's strategic. So today we gonna get into some shit today, gang. Get into some shit today. See if we can find out who are those Tartarians that really speak. Because as I showed you before, when we was doing the research on the Mongolian spots, which showed that African Americans, quotation marks, have this as the highest rating. And then we started looking at what is really Mongolia. What is Mongolia and who are the Mongolians? Start talking about the Khans. Who is Genghis Khan and who were the other Khans? How did that look, right? And ultimately, how did that manifest into the reality that we understand today? Doing the research on the Khan, on the Mongolians and Genghis Khan, you find out that they called them the Black Tartarians. So you got the Black Tartarians. You got the Black Tartarians of Mongolia, who had one of the biggest empires on the planet. And everywhere we find this technology, we find these buildings, we find these cathedrals, we find these state bank buildings and federal buildings, all with the same architecture, all founded in roughly the same time period. I got some. Y'all ready? Pull it up right now. Got 85. Try to get 100 people in the building. Only way we're gonna be able to do that is y'all get help a brother out special. Bang that like button, share the video. Try. As I pull this video up, One for y'all. What's up, big dog? Appreciate it. What's going on with the electronics today?
Imagine this history is a possibility. Why? Because you do not have to believe the information in this video. Not
Let's switch it up. Let's switch it up. Y'all ready? Let's see what he got going on, child.
My friends all fall so easily.
All right, child, hold on. Whatever reason, you don't want to have no audio right now. Y'all know every time I get to start about to cook some shit, I can't wait till I get my own motherfucking servers and my own, man, I'm telling you, tribe. I can't wait. I never use you weak ass streaming services again on my life. Let's go.
And many of us associate crucial parts of his education with our personality. There's nothing wrong with that. But unfortunately, the rulers that be have a specific agenda at play. This video is not to invoke racism in any way, shape, or form. The purpose is to throw it out, in hopes that it may be useful to all my brothers and sisters, regardless of skin color, that we may see past the boundaries of race or ratios, where we all share the same life that is light. We have been fed lies in order to keep one thing consistent: identity crisis. This was by design. Otherwise, why have we not heard more of the true origin of the name of California? It's named after a magnificent black Moorish queen. By Moor, I mean indigenous enlightened melanated peoples. I don't think our current culture can truly understand how enlightened the indigenous races of these lands were. The prevailing American culture in the youth today.
Wait a minute, man, hold on. So my unveil says when he uses more, he's talking about indigenous, melanated, enlightened. So very interesting choice of words he chose to use, right? Because see, you got indigenous people all over the earth, but not all of them are in what we would call enlightened phases, right? If we go to Africa and you see people in huts and shit like that, right? Well, that is reduced usually to primitive culture, right? Hunter-gatherer type shit. But then when you talking about indigenous, melanated, enlightened people, right? So they gave the enlightened, at least this is what I'm interpreting, and y'all can correct them. They people who they saying are part of the enlightened indigenous melanated folk. They calling them Moors. So like more like a title like Khan. Was it specifically a descriptive term? Did it represent a title, aristocracy of some sort?
Revolves around demeaning women, money, and the lust of power, pointed in how become. Specifically, inhabiting what was melanated peoples. I don't think current culture can truly understand how enlightened the indigenous race of these Latin American culture and the youth today revolves around demeaning women, money, and the lust for power. Our ancestors would not only be embarrassed, but disappointed in how lost we have become. Specifically, the indigenous Moors inhabiting what was left of Mu, or what is known in the Spanish legend as the island of California, were known for their grand psychic abilities. The females ruled as their psychic and mental abilities were far superior than the males. They were master shamans as they could navigate between realms at will, something our modern culture can't even begin to comprehend. The closest topics that we have is dreams, astral projection, but these concepts still don't fully explain to the modern mind the full dynamic of what these ancient lands were like. We can imagine it, but we prescribe that to the realm of fantasy. How do we know this? Well, this tale comes from a Spanish fantasy novel from the 1500s from our modern mainstream timeline, Las Surgas de Esplandian by Montalvo. It is said to be ancient legends, and most people at the time even believed it to be true. Here's what mainstream history says. The Adventures of Esplandian is the fifth book in a series of Spanish chivalric romance novels by Garcia Rodriguez de Montalvo, which began with Amadis de Gaula, an even older series. Even Hernan Cortez, who would conquer the Gaula, an even older series, de Montalvo, which began with Amadis de Gaula, an even older series. Even Hernan Cortez, who would conquer the Aztec Empire and name the state of California, believed in their legends. I want you to pay attention to this symbol as it will be important later. Bernal Diaz says, quote, "We were seized with admiration and declared they seemed like the castles of enchantment recorded in the book of Amadis de Gaula, grand towers, temples, and edifices that seemed to rise from the water, and all these were constructed of stone and mortar. Some of our soldiers said they could not be sure whether they were really seeing this or were dreaming." Now, I have to start this off as if you've never watched a video on this channel. However, there are more videos on the channel that break down the lie of history if you wish to see it explained further. This is more of a sequel to the understanding that our entire history is a lie. Many have heard of the theory of Tartaria by now, but in short, the history we are fed in the education systems are a falsity. A lie designed to keep us enslaved, enslavement through identification crisis. They have taught us to identify ourselves with monkeys, that all human beings originate from Africa, that we evolved through fear and survival, as our consciousness mysteriously forms through some type of physical means. The origin that we are given, of course, is but a random explosion of nothing. They then give us false, soulless history. But many of us know that there's something more. Deep in our subconscious, we know the stories of Atlantis and advanced ancient civilizations. It's a part of our collective memory. We are taught that we had a linear progress of evolution when the truth of the matter is that there have been multiple cataclysms in the past. We know of this too. Everyone knows of the story of the flood. It is the most known story in the world. That kind of trauma would never go away within our psyches. Yet, that would mean that we de-evolved, that we were once great nations who had achieved peace and saw past the boundaries of race, ratios. We developed advanced spiritual practices and had truly reached the golden age. Many technologies existed that would be hard for the modern man to imagine possible. In this day, we have lost our sovereignty, our minds, our sense of divinity. We have been fed materialism from our birth. The spirit in many of our people are dwindling, but this is the age of awakening. In the official timeline that they give us, the fall of Rome is 2,000 years ago. It's very difficult in a short segment to fully explain everything, especially the timeline, but the way I would put it is that these ancient architectures that we call Greco-Roman are actually from Atlantis, and Atlantis is likely not 13,000 years ago as Graham Hancock suggests. Remember, he believes that we came from monkeys. Atlantis is of a much more recent time, and what was part of what we now know as America. It's hard to comprehend the nature of this reality, and shocking to realize the drastic measures that have taken place in such a short period of time. Many scholars in the modern day have tried to create a new timeline, such as Fomenko and Isaac Newton. The origin of our modern timeline comes from a man named Scaliger. This is where we get our mainstream timeline, but many debate that this is a falsity created by a specific religious group. This group falsified history in order to make it seem as if they have the most ancient religion. The first hint that we see to this is Origen versus Celsus, in which Origen argues for the antiquity of the Jews. It's obvious out of this piece that Origen is purposely concealing the secret history of the Hyperboreans. Now, another piece of the puzzle that you need to understand is the Phoenicians.
Hold the fuck on. Hold up, man. Did y'all just see that shit?
Now, another piece of the puzzle.
What are we witnessing here? Top of the morning, balance of the evening. What's up, tribe? American Warrior in the building. What's up, gang? What the fuck is that? It's a Venus flytrap in her young, nigga. Like, what the fuck? What the fuck? These niggas look like, this nigga on the left look like he came out of a corn stalk. The shit in the middle ain't even got a face. That's what I say is the Venus flytrap. Like, come on, man.
You need to understand.
Tribe. All types of motherfucking like all, oh shit, nigga. If I see one of you motherfuckers hobbling down the street, bitch, you going back to Origin or whatever the hell they just said. You going back though. Odin, bitch, you going to whichever god you believe in, ho.
Very important. In our administered history, they date the Phoenicians to about 5,000 years ago, but this group is actually of a much more recent time. Earlier, I mentioned to pay attention to the symbol with Hernan Cortez. You will see these types of symbols everywhere, on the only remaining maps, famous characters that we are fed such as Scaliger. This symbol is the secret symbol for the hidden new rulers, the Headless Knight. The Phoenicians dominated from the eastern Mediterranean to the coast of Africa, all the way to Spain and Northern Ireland in mainstream history. The confusing part about all of this is that history mixes the group that survived and took over the world, the Catholic Jesuits, with the ancient races that once existed in these lands. These were mixed cultures. The cultures that existed arose from the two ancient god races, the ancient Bereans, the ancient Lemurians. There are obviously more layers to this, so I'll try and explain. The original white people that we have in history are of the Aryan or ancient Hyperboreans, who were fair-skinned with red and blonde hair. Their homeland is in ancient Ibernia in the far north. For black people, the most ancient depiction comes from ancient Irish legends, the Fomorians, a great civilization of great stature who had grand occult abilities. From Donnelly's Atlantis, quote, "The Fomorians were from Atlantis. They were called Fomorag Afrique, and Fomorag, which has been rendered into English as Fomorians. They possess ships, and the uniform representation is that they came, as the name Fomorag Afrique indicated, from Africa. But in that day, Africa did not mean the continent of Africa as we now understand it. Major Wilford, in the 8th volume of the Asiatic Researches, has pointed out that Africa comes from Apar, Apara, or Aparika, terms used to signify the West, just as we now speak of the Asiatic world as the East. When, therefore, the Fomorians claimed to come from Africa, they simply meant that they came from the West. in other words, from Atlantis. Now, it is said from these ancient legends that the Fomorians were a warlike race, and that they caused great havoc in the world. These are the times when Atlantis was beginning to fall. War was happening constantly. From Donnelly's Atlantis, quote, "The Irish annals speak of the Fomorians as a warlike race, who, according to the annals of Clon Macnois, were a sept descended from Ham, the son of Noah, and lived in piracy and spoiled other nations, and were in those days very troublesome to the whole world. Were not these the inhabitants?"
Now, who they talking about, right? They say, they say, and live by piracy and spoils of other nations, and were in those days very troublesome to the whole world. Now that, eh, like that sounds like white slavery. Me, I'm just like I don't know why it sounds like that, but it sounds like the story that we get when we talk about North Africa and the whole, Anyway, let's continue.
Inhabitants of Atlantis, who, according to Plato, carried their arms to Egypt and Athens, and whose subsequent destruction had been attributed to divine vengeance invoked by their arrogance and oppressions? Quote, "The Fomorians were a civilized race. They had a fleet of 60 ships and a strong army. They were basically ancient sea pirates, and some were giants, up to 12 feet tall. They were one of the first explorers of Ireland before the destruction of Atlantis." Quote, "They possessed Ireland from so early a period that by some of the historians, they are spoken of as the aborigines of the country. The first invasion to the country was by the Basque people, or the Atlantis settlements in Spain. Many of you may think that this is fantasy, but this is common knowledge in mainstream history. How many black people today in America know that Ireland is an integral part of their history? Not many. Quote, "The Fomorians defeated Partholon's people, the Basque from Spain, killed Partholon, and drove the invaders out of the country. The next invader to their dominions was Nimhid. He captured one of their fortifications, but it was retaken by the Fomorians under Mort. Nimhid was driven out of the country, and the Atlanteans continued in undisturbed possession of the island, the Fomorians, for 400 years more. Then came the Firbolgs. They conquered the whole island and divided it into 5 provinces. They held possession of the country for only 37 years, when they were overthrown by the Tuatha De Danann, a people more advanced in civilization. The Tuatha De Danann were the Hyperboreans. They came from what we call the North. Now, there's even more history that we don't know. This is from the timeline where most knowledge was destroyed. All we are left with is our legends. We do have authority on this legend as it is quoted in the Book of Ballymote. So what else do we have? Well, we have legends of ancient Lemuria, the ancestral homeland of black peoples. In H.P. Blavatsky's The Secret Doctrine, quote, "There's a period of a few million of years to cover between the first mindless race and the highly intelligent and intellectual later Lemurians." Now, before we continue, let me just say that I don't agree with your timeline or completely concur with your views on the Theosophical Society. According to the story, she obtained this information from an ancient book that she had access to that is not exposed to the public. Quote, "Madame Blavatsky claimed to have seen a manuscript of the Book of Zion when studying esoteric lore in Tibet. She claimed this and other ancient manuscripts were safeguarded from profane eyes by the initiates of an occult brotherhood. Many of the lands of Lemuria still exist today, such as Australia, New Zealand, Madagascar, and even parts of America such as California. Quote, they, the Lemurians, built huge cities of rare earths and metals. They built out of the fires lava vomited, out of the white stone of the mountains marble, and the black stone of the subterranean fires. They cut their own images in their size and likeness and worshipped them. The Lemurians were a spiritual race of black giants. They were a mix of Mongolian and black and had different organs according to Blavatsky. and worshipped them. The Lemurians were a spiritual race of black giants. They were a mix of Mongolian and black and had different organs according to Blavatsky. It is said that they had a physical eye on the back of their head, and that this degenerated into the now called third eye, and that they were the grand magicians of the elements. Quote, "This is the reason why perhaps even Easter Island with its wondrous gigantic statues, a speaking witness to a submerged continent with a civilized mankind on it. This is why many aborigines from the lands around the Pacific Ring of Fire are of a dark complexion. The pure blood of black peoples come from this ancestral homeland of Lemuria. The remnants of this land is in California. The old maps show California as an island because Mu went through many stages and began to merge with the mainland of terra firma as parts of the western coast began to sink. In the occult tradition, root races are basically different versions of the human body in connection with different ages. The first root race was said to be completely ethereal. The second root race had more physical bodies and spawned in Hyperborea. The third root race, the form that we now truly recognize as human, existed on the lost continent of Lemuria. And the fourth root race developed into Atlantis. According to the occult tradition, this isn't all done simply by sexual reproduction. The first root race, the Polarians, from the center pole of our realm, were completely androgynous beings. This esoteric lore is prevalent through the Hellenes as we hear this from Plato. They had the process of asexual reproduction. This changes as it is said that races can manifest into this reality without budding, but through some type of coming down from above or spirit spawning process. As these races
See. This I have a problem with right here, right? This is what I like. This is that zesty occult lore. Yeah. I ain't fucking with that. But nah, man. Ain't no motherfucking androgynous. What's up with you niggas, man? You niggas all right? What's up with you guys? They want to put that shit is like Frank's Hots. They want to put that shit on everything, nigga. Relax. Sheesh. Nobody asked for lemon zest today. God damn, you gonna eat lemon zest every motherfucking day? That's why your lips look like that. That was... You've been sucking on lemons your whole life. Now you got a lisp. Relax. Damn. Get Pocahontas in here. Shit. Always some old zesty, androgynous, can be everything but nothing here it is. Man, you better... Now y'all know I know about the warm lemon water. Don't play on me. You know I know about the warm lemon water. But goddamn, I mean, that ain't the type of lemons I'm talking about. I say when life give you lemons, you make orange juice. Now
from spirit and continued their progress through the ages, everything is being recorded into the Akashic records. This affects the next races to come in the coming ages. There were many colonies of Atlantis. We know of one colony today, such as the Olmecs, was a place where many...
Atlantis, I mean, the Olmecs as a colony of Atlantis. Interesting.
Cultures came and traded. These are the Atlantean races. And I'm not 100% sure how the first two are pronounced, but we have number 1, the Romahal, number 2, the Tlavati, number 3, Toltec, 4, First Turanian, 5, Original Semite, 6, Akkadian, 7, Mongolian. Quote, thus the first Atlantean races born on the Lemurian continent separated from their earliest tribes into the righteous and the unrighteous, into those who worship the one unseen spirit of nature, the ray of which man feels within himself, or the pantheist, and those who offered fanatical worship to the spirits of the earth, the dark cosmic, anthropomorphic powers, Saturn, with whom they made alliance.
Making a text only
timeframes lived or remnants of them survived in the areas occupied. It should also be remembered that in some cases, a catastrophe was anticipated by the priest more in tune with higher energies, and many migrations into lands currently in existence took place before all of Atlantis was submerged. There was intermarrying not only among the subraces of Atlantis, but also with the remains of Lemurian subraces who had escaped before the fiery end of Lemuria. The first subrace, quote, "The Romahals were a dark race, their complexion being a sort of mahogany black. Their height in these early days was about 10 or 12 feet, truly a race of giants. But through the centuries, their stature gradually dwindled, as did that of all races in turn, and later on we shall find that they had shrunk to the stature of a fur-fused man. They ultimately migrated to the southern shores of Atlantis, where they were engaged in constant warfare with the 6th and 7th subraces of the Lemurians then inhabiting that country. A large part of the tribe eventually moved north, while the remainder settled down and intermarried with these black Lemurian aborigines. The second subrace, the Tlavatli, originated on an island off the west coast of Atlantis. They were a strong race, not as tall as the Romahal, with reddish-brown skin. They were a mountain-loving people who, along with the third subrace, the Toltecs, inhabited the western island which formed part of what is now known as the American continent. The Toltecs, the third subrace, stood about 8 feet tall and had reddish-brown skin, like the Tlavatli, but more copper-colored. The features of the Toltecs, according to William Scott Elliott, were straight and well-marked, not unlike the ancient Greeks. The Toltecs ruled the entire continent of Atlantis peacefully for thousands of years. The Turanians, the fourth subrace, originated on the eastern side of the continent. They were yellow-skinned humans who were never a dominant race on the mother continent, though some of their tribes and family races became fairly powerful. The fifth subrace were the Semites.
Oh shit. Oh man, we way out there, boy. We ain't got no motherfucking we ain't got we don't have any life vests at all. We out here, tribe. We are out here.
Who had their home on the northeastern part of a peninsula which is now Scotland and Ireland. They were a disconnected race, always warring with their neighbors and maintaining their independence from the southern kings. The sixth subrace, the Acadians, came into existence after the first great disaster. Born on a peninsula further south of the Semites, the Acadians quickly migrated to the much larger continent of Atlantis. They fought and overcame the original Semites, ruling Atlantis for several hundred years. The Mongolians, the seventh subrace, had no touch with the mother continent. They were developed from the descendants of the Turanians. They spread over what is now Asia. Master Kut Humi in the Mahatma letters wrote that the modern Oriental races such as the Chinese, Mongolian, Tibetan, Malaysian, Indonesian, Japanese, Vietnamese, and so on are largely descended from the seventh and final subrace of the Atlantean root race. Quote, "The Lemuro-Atlanteans built cities and spread civilization, the incipient stage of anthropomorphism. Their statues witness to the size of the Lemuro-Atlanteans. Lemuria destroyed by fire, Atlantis by water, the flood, the destruction of the fourth race and of the last antediluvian monster animals. By monster animals, there were many creatures that used to exist that were truly evil. We hear stories of this in every culture around the world, or in some type of flood myth, and great mythical creatures that would terrorize the city."
This some goddamn Lord of the Rings type shit. Goddamn it. This some Lord of the Rings type shit.
After each age, the continents change quite drastically. Continents sink and rise. Comets come and do impossible movements in the sky, unexplainable by modern science, and causes cataclysms and destruction by fire. The myths say that the gods were to blame, as they washed over and judged us as we passed through the ages. We must understand that the continent shifted quite drastically within the last 1,000 years, as it explains the supposed cartographic errors of the maps from the 16th and 17th century. Notice that most of our maps stop around the 1400s, and this date may even be made up from most of these documents. These new rulers, who were planning to conquer and create a new world, who came from the Phoenician subrace, were masters of the sea and became the world's first global corporation. They became the hidden hand behind all the global master elite. They conquered Spain as the Castiles, manifesting as the Catholic Jesuits, then becoming the Venetians, the hidden hand beneath all public education and science, teaching a new cosmology of Saturn worship. This group worshipped the sun, but we have more than one sun, and they shift. In this interpretation, our neighboring planets are suns. This is basic occult knowledge explained in a modern way. But basically, one of these cataclysms that led to the destruction of the great Church of Iessa, the destruction of all great Moorish civilizations, and the remaining empires in the world, done through some type of ritual of Baal, in which Saturn could be summoned into this physical world. The Phoenicians worshipped Baal in a way that we can never imagine. A good reference is The Adventures of Captain Mago, a Phoenician expedition 1000 BC, if you want to understand their want for control. Now, this is written from our modern timeline perspective, but what needs to be said is that these elites changed the calendar system, and their own age, they added 1,000 years. So imagine that the fall of Rome is pushed forward 1,000 years on our mainstream timeline. You can trace Freemasonry back to this Phoenician cult. The Phoenicians belonged to the Aryan root race, so originally they were very renowned people. However, they fell to materialism in their quest to dominate the world market. What happened was there was still more powerful empires in the world that posed a threat to the Phoenicians. Many really, the Moors, the Tartarians, the Ottoman Empire, and the Church of Iessa, also known as the Druids, the original Hebrews. They needed to destroy the rest of the Aryans. They wanted to rule the next coming age. Which, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned, but they don't all die. It is said that the Atlanteans still exist. Same for the Hyperboreans, for they do not age. So that may just be part of it, is that the Phoenicians got access to this ancient knowledge of esoteric wisdom, and they took advantage of it. They prepared devices for surviving underwater, hence the symbolism of the mermaid prevalent in their culture and the worship of the conch. Either way, they survived this event and immediately began educating and creating the new world. Historical figures were made up completely. All the knowledge that we have is from the main school in Venice, from the Phoenicians who became the Venetians. These Jesuits then conquered through Spain and Britain. This version of Spanish is the Jesuit Spanish tongue, Castilian Spanish. The royal Castile family is a branch of the Phoenician chain, as you can see with the royal arms. Just look at the royal arms of all these families and you will clearly see who's in charge. They took old kings and renamed them and gave them new dates. The Library of Alexandria, containing the knowledge of all ages before, was burned. This group sought out the remaining knowledge in the world through the Knights Templar, burning the sacred esoteric knowledge of all the nations. In Plato's Timaeus, Solon, a Hellene, goes to one of the colonies in Egypt known as Sais. Based on his description, Plato presents the priests to be a darker complexion. These people are not exactly the purebloods from Lemuria, but a mixed race with multiple shades from dark brown to light brown with slight variations of hue, mostly red, said to be descended from the Tolmecs. There may have been some who had the strong blood from the Lemurian race with a dark black with bluish reflection, but they are not from these lands. We will soon see that there are many different races of people who lived in these lands. From Plato's Timaeus, quote, "Thereupon one of the priests, who was of very great age, said, 'O Solon, Solon, you Hellenes are never anything but children, and there is not an old man among you.' Solon in return asked him what he meant. 'I mean to say,' he replied, 'that in mine you are all young. There is no old opinion handed down among you by ancient tradition, nor any science which is hoary with age. And I will tell you why. There have been, and will be again, many destructions of mankind arising out of many causes. The greatest have been brought about by the agencies of fire and water, and other lesser ones by innumerable other causes. There is a story, which even you preserve, that one upon a time, Hatheon, the son of Helios, have yoked the steeds in his father's chariot, because he was not able to drive them in the path of his father, burnt up all that was upon the earth, and him, and was himself destroyed by a thunderbolt. Now this has the form of a myth, but really signifies a declination of the bodies moving in the heavens around the earth, and a great configuration of things upon the earth, which recurs after long intervals. At such times, those who live upon the mountains and in the dry and lofty places are more liable to destruction than those who dwell by rivers or on the seashore. Now, for some context here, basically Solon took a trip to Sais into Egypt and when Solon arrived, they greeted him with great honor. It seems that he wanted to share his knowledge, Solon, as if he was slightly boasting about his esoteric wisdom that he had recently learned. The priest is responding and telling him about a race of people who not only he didn't know about, but were a common ancestor of the two. Also, in terms of timeline and Plato, this could be ancient information or different books from the authors from the last age, compiled into one author, created by, you guessed it, the new rulers, Jesuit Phoenicians. I still think many of these books contain golden nuggets that they have left for those who seek wisdom. The only thing is, remember, they are trying to date this as if this process took 8,000 years. They adjusted the age in the translation based on the new knowledge at the time that this was translated. This is also where Blavatsky bases a lot of her history, including Tibetan and Hindu philosophies. So you can see how these made-up figures of the church could have influenced both science and occult circles. We continue, quote, "As for those genealogies of yours which you just now recounted to us, Solon, they are no better than tales of children. In the first place, you remember a single deluge only, but there were many previous ones. In the next place, you do not know that there formerly dwelt in your land the fairest and noble race of men which ever lived, and that you and your whole city are descended from a small seed or remnant of them which survived. And this was unknown to you because, for many generations, the survivors of that destruction died, leaving no written word. For there was a time so long before the great deluge of all, and the city, which now is Athens, was first and born in every way the best governed of all cities. It is said to have performed the noblest deeds and to have had the fairest constitution of any which tradition tells under the face of heaven." Solon marveled at his words, and earnestly requested the priest to inform him exactly in order about these former citizens. "You're welcome to hear about them, Solon," said the priest, "both for your own sake and for that of your own city, and above all, for the sake of the goddess who is the common patron and parent and educator of both our cities. She founded your city 1,000 years before ours, receiving from the earth and Hephaestus the seed of your race, and afterwards she founded ours, of which the constitution is recorded in our sacred registers to be 8,000 years old." Now, in Donnelly's Atlantis, quote, "What proof do we have that the Egyptians were a colony from Atlantis? 1. They claim descent from the 12 great gods, which must have meant the 12 gods of Atlantis, to wit, Poseidon and Cleito and their 10 sons. 2. According to the traditions of the Phoenicians, the Egyptians derived their civilization from them. And as the Egyptians far antedated the rise of the Phoenician nations proper, this must have meant that the Egypt derived its civilization from the same country to which the Phoenicians owed their own origin. The Phoenician legends show that Mysore, from whom the Egyptians were descended, was the child of the Phoenician gods Amnias and Magus. Mysore gave birth to Tuat, the god of letters, the inventor of the alphabet, and Tuat became Thoth, the god of history of the Egyptians. Sanchoniathon tells us that the Kronos, king of Atlantis, visited the south and gave all of Egypt to the god Tuat, that it might be his kingdom. Mysore is probably the king Mestor, named by Plato. It was common knowledge throughout the 19th century that the Phoenicians were the predecessors to the Egyptians. This has now since changed in academic circles as they tend to try to hide this Phoenician group as much as possible. The reason being is because the Phoenicians is a cover name for a group of people who descended from the great Hyperboreans and established a priesthood in many of these lands after the flood. We know this in history as the Celtic race. However, the connection between the Celtics and Phoenicians is not discussed in modern academic circles. Therein lies the problem. The Phoenicians, or Phoenicians, were once a great race. This is the mother priesthood called the Church of Iessa that the priest in Timaeus is discussing. They came and instructed many of the races after the flood, reestablishing the common traits of civilization. The myths of these people were hunted by this new group of rulers as well, for they wanted to destroy the pure bloodline of all races so that they could be the only race of God, creating a new bloodline. This group took over the original priesthood of Iessa, labeled them pagans, stole their history, and enslaved humanity and all other races. They took over the Bible and began teaching that God can only be reached through the Church of Jesus, when that the old teachings were never about belief in authority, but in a beautiful mythos that connected divinity and man as one, as a moral respect for nature, a duty for taking care of all life and spreading peace through a divine cosmology of self, one that had been passed down for generations through studying the stars carefully and aligning them to attributes of ego and self. This is how astrology, or astrotheology, was passed back into the world after the flood of Atlantis. These Jesuits and the Church of Rome, who really belonged to the Akkadian subrace, not the original Semites, or in other words, Celts, these Akkadians caused war and destruction among the rest of the Aryan nations, specifically starting with the original Semites and this is where the Phoenicians come in. They then merged all of this history into one history under the discreet and secret name Phoenicians, which really refers to multiple peoples, and they did this through taking over Rome and then the rest of the world. Quote, "The Great Pyramid in its original and dazzling splendor of light under the Egyptian sun was the object in wonderment and awe to all beholders. It surpassed in sublime grandeur any other monument or structure ever erected by man on this globe. It was considered the greatest of the 7 wonders in the ancient world. Its partial destruction and defacement by removing its upper part and capstone, and by stripping it of the outer casing of white stone, which gave it an aspect of dazzling brightness, leaving it in outward appearance bare and nude, silent and mute as to its mission, as a milestone without a figure. This has been a great loss to mankind. In its former glory, it was a mountain of light, a blaze of brightness, a symbol in the desert. It was a testimonial and living stone, bespeaking to mankind of their inheritance of a spiritual kingdom. At noonday, its lofty golden capstone seemed to be at one with the sun, uniting earth and heaven in eternal unity, a symbolic union of spirit and matter. To mar this sublime pillar, this grand masterpiece of the Irish Magian priest of Iessa was a part of a plot as selfish as any ever conceived. Now another example is Baalbek. That temple was not originally created for Baal, but it is known as that because the Phoenicians took over this land and dedicated ancient Aryan temples to Saturn worship. The original Semites are also known as the Druids or the Irish Magian priests. Now in history, they are known to be the original Druids, the descendants of the Hyperboreans. They re-established high culture after the flood and were known as fair-skinned with red and blonde hair. Now, that doesn't mean there weren't any black people who belonged to this church. There very may well have, as we know now the true history of Ireland, as Fomorians were the original Aborigines before taken over by the Tuatha-De-Danann. Interracial relationship had already begun, as we can see in the story of Timaeus with the Egyptian priest, and many other myths from around the world such as the Aztecs and China. We even have stories of the Queen of Scotia. Quote, "The story of Scotia begins with a Greek king by the name of Gaithalos. In one version of the story, which involves Ireland, Gaithalos is known as Goadha Glas. The word Gael is said to be derived from his name, and was originally from the region of Scythia. It is also said that Goadha Glas lived during the time of Moses, and the latter is said to have cured the former when he was bitten by a serpent. Goadha Glas was also promised by Moses that no serpent or other poisonous creature would inhabit the western island, that his posterity would inhabit it one day. One of Goadha Glas' grandsons, Niul, was invited into Egypt as an instructor by a pharaoh, and eventually married one of his daughters, Scotia. Both Scotland and the Roman name for Ireland, Scotia, are said to be derived from her name. Niul and Scotia's people were later derived from Egypt by a later pharaoh, and wandered around the Mediterranean until they reached Spain. Scotia was said to be a white queen with blue eyes from her native land of Scotland.
A lot of people ask me,
that the hieroglyphs have people of many different sizes, but it begins to make us question whether black people came from Africa. In many references, it suggests that the Tolmecs lived in this area first after Atlantis. The Egyptian culture developed into a multicultural center for learning and spiritual development for all races. Plato even came to Egypt supposedly to go through a ritual in the Grand Pyramid. It seems that Egyptologists are happy to distort the history of these lands and slap on dates however they like. They also are hiding evidence from being explored, as many sites are still hidden to the public. The story of Egypt and its timeline is distorted because it is the last remaining power edifice from the last age. Not only did the Phoenicians take control of the spiritual center of the world, they destroyed all conflicted evidence of this root race and all her subraces. This could be why the leaders still to this day show off these Egyptian artifacts around the world to show who the new true rulers are.
and kissing, or barefoot, straw in our mouth, laughing and fishing. I know you from the city and love Louis Vuitton, but you stressed out. Come over here and let me calm your soul. Let me rub on your back, paint on your toes. Let me scratch the dandruff out of your scalp, picking your nose.
Oh boy, you so nasty.
It's all I hear you scream, but you the answer to my question. The air to my dreams, you already yo killer. We can call our white friends up and drink a Miller, genuine draft, then kick them all out of the house. Take us a bath. You choose. All I need in this world is my OU, and I'm
worry, girl. Don't worry, yeah. Don't worry, no. You ain't never got to worry about a thing, baby. Oh, oh. We're alright. Yeah, we're alright. Oh, hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Yeah.
All right. Shout out to all the American Aborigines. First leg is what's up. So what y'all think, man? What y'all think? Matter of fact, let me drop this link. So is this all what they hiding behind the background of this ancient history of all of these wars, all of these space god creatures? He said, you mix with Liberian. That's fucking funny. You nigga full-blooded Liberian out this bitch. We got 100 people in the building. Top of the morning, balance of the evening. I hope that y'all are doing well this grand horizon. Can I get a like check, please? Can I get a like check, please?
Please search again for your file. Your link.
Can I get a like check? Hold on. What we looking like? We ain't got but 86 likes in the building. Ain't that a bitch? Ain't that a bitch? Now my phone ring. Man, hold on. All right. Mic check, mic check. What the hell is going on with the sound? This shit been acting weird all day. I ain't gonna lie. All right. Let's get back into the build.
Quote, it was conceived and put into effect by the ruling spirits at the head of the Roman Church and state of their day, who cherished the ambitious and far-reaching idea of nothing less than universal rule for their church and empire. In the course of these pages, I will endeavor to explain and expose the conspiracy and the means by which those designing men who composed it advanced their project, and with the aid of their successors, They, I purpose to show, by persistent effort, brought the greater part of the Western world under their empire and church dominion, and brought this conspiracy to an only.
Why is this nigga talking so fast? They go crazy right now, but like it's scramble.
Almost complete success. It was the idea held by the leaders of the Roman Church and state, they were practically one, that all power should be centralized in the head of the church, who was emperor of the state, and any and all religious institutions which in any way conflicted with this ideal were to be done away with. For this reason, the mystery cults were suppressed, and initiation into the ancient or esoteric mysteries were forbidden, so that no religious establishment, worship, or practice would exist which would draw and hold men to it.
Oh shit, that's kind of similar to what was being said yesterday when we was reading about Cahokia. Hold on a second. Yeah, that was what we was reading about when we was reading about Cahokia. It was talking about the same thing. How this dude just decided one day we gonna run this shit. And from that point on, every archaeological find, you know what I'm saying, that was seen pretty much goddamn was fucked up from that. Now, hold on one second. Let's see if we can get back to the spot we was at yesterday. Okay, yeah, we was about right here. Hold on, y'all. I'm just trying to find the spot where so I'm not just scrolling. Just give me a second. Give me a second. Go through all this shit. Yeah, hold on. Damn. This shit got so much shit on the complex. I'm trying to get out the complex. It talks about every single mound they got on this all 100 and I don't even know how many there is. All right, so while I'm going through this, I'll do this right here for you. All right, here we go. Let me share this out to y'all. I don't know what's up with the shit today, gang. Like, ain't nothing fucking working today. It's crazy.
coffee, or you're laying down and relaxing. This video is a research project. You may need to watch it multiple times. To begin, let me ask you a question. Do you believe the mainstream narrative? This is a yes or no question. You can't be halfway on it because what we're about to cover is drastically different from what we've been taught in the schools. Many will reject this information and most likely respond with scorn and attacks, most likely because these Vanderbilts are essentially worshipped. I ask you, do you believe in the mainstream narrative? And to be more specific, I mean in regards to the robber barons, the people who literally created modern America, the Gilded Age. Do you believe the story we are given in regards to these wealthy capitalists who supposedly lived rags to riches? They just worked hard to get where they were and just so happened to get lucky and become the richest people on the planet. Then, they continued to achieve some of the most advanced architectural and technological leaps ever seen for this time period. If you believe that these men truly built America and built all these old world structures in America, then let me redirect you. I think you landed on the wrong video. Here, the History Channel, the best source for us to learn about our history. Let's see what they have to offer. Oh look, a new show on the Gilded Age and robber barons. This must be everything we need to know. You can go watch this if you believe the story they tell us. You know, it's kind of insane that they made this. It's kind of some weird drama that continues this age-long propaganda involving some characters that have some shady histories. It's sad that people just accept these stories without any questions. I thought the History Channel was there to educate us. Well, I believe that these robber barons and all their achievements deserve to be questioned. I mean, after all, the Vanderbilts were literally the richest people on the planet. They were the kings and queens of America. These robber barons were the rock stars, the first celebrities. They were the Bill Gates mixed with the Kardashians, but this was 100 years ago. And they essentially set the standard. They had massive yachts, mansions, and properties the likes of which have never been truly matched. The media and the history books covered for them and painted them as the heroes of America, the great philanthropist. But they were not immune to criticism. They say these detractors were just other competitors who were jealous, but they had many critiques throughout time. One of the most popular rumors was that Cornelius Vanderbilt obtained his riches out of nowhere, that he was cruel, stern, and hated all of his kids except the only one of them that showed slight promise. It's said that they were in cahoots with many state legislators, and that anyone who disagreed with him within his family, including his mother and his wife, would be sent to an asylum. If that isn't suspicious enough, no other American dynasty can match the amount of European Gothic mansions that they built, and no other family has them as well preserved and intact. So we must start with the Vanderbilts. There's even more to cover, but in order to fully present my case, we must first cover the history of the Vanderbilts from an alternative point of view. And yes, that means questioning the status quo. The Dutch. So when it comes to the Vanderbilts, the story always starts with Cornelius Vanderbilt, or the Commodore. But what does that even mean, and what is his past? The issue becomes that when you want to look into their past, the biographers want to paint Cornelius and the whole family of Vanderbilts as slowly working their way to riches. That is crucial for them to support their claims to their wealth. Like I said, their main critiques is that they were upstarts or people that gained a mass amount of wealth from nowhere. In other words, an industry plant. So of course, when you read into this, they're going to tell you that people named Vanderbilt slowly built up property and wealth just as these small town Dutch farmers in New York. What they won't tell you is that this seems to be part of some type of secret royal family once you start to just dig a little bit deeper. What we are talking about is the Dutch colonization was being operated by multiple different forces during this time period. But were these multiple forces? No, these were Vatican-owned forces. Let's just take a look at a map for a second. All of Europe was owned by the Venetians at this point. and I can prove that by just looking at the heraldry. First, we have to start with the Dutch Golden Age, which was also called the Dutch Miracle. What we have to understand is that each one of these countries was essentially a corporation in the eyes of the Phoenician ancient families that then became the Venetians. If you're new and that's confusing, you'll have to watch our other videos to get a full breakdown on that transition. But you really don't even need to know that. Just look. It's called Leo Belgicus, Latin for the Belgic lion, which was used in both heraldry and map design to symbolize the former lower countries with the shape of a lion. Look at this. You can even see the fleur-de-lis. I thought this was a French symbol. What about the double-headed phoenix? Why is this on a Dutch map? It's also accompanied by the Dutch maiden, the national personification of the Dutch Republic. My research focuses on a lot of alternative history, and usually that involves diving into old maps and coat of arms. Once you've looked at these enough, you begin to notice a theme. They're using these symbols as a way to communicate. To break this down, the lion is the symbol of Venice. But this power is manifesting in one of her corporations, the Dutch Empire, which also manifests in the Dutch East India Company. You will see these symbols everywhere. This is crucial to take note of. The maiden symbol is even more telling. She's typically depicted wearing a Roman or Venetian garment and with a lion by her side. This is telling you that the Dutch were doing the dirty work for the Vatican, but it wasn't just the Dutch, it was all of Europe and spreading quickly both west and east. Just look at this heraldry. Are we supposed to believe that these were all just independent nations? And after all, the Vatican did rule all of Europe for 1500 years. Why can't we ask if it ever ended? But there is one that I want you to look at that you must not forget, as it is essential to understanding my point for later in the video. Look at this coat of arms. Notice, 2 griffins holding up a knight's helmet. You will see this in many coat of arms. But why is this in the Book of Hours from the early 1500s? This is what is referred to as the headless knight. It's a royal symbol, and it refers to the hidden rulers, which are the ancient Phoenician families, with their power center being Venice and Rome. A common theme, as you will see later in this video, is that when the wealthy move to another city, they bring all their buddies and they essentially get another corporation started. In fact, there are several similarities between Venice and Amsterdam. These were the urban elites of Europe, and anyone with a study of world history knows this to be true. Amsterdam is literally called the Venice of the North. Both the Netherlands and Italy were both having a Renaissance period during this time in the early 16th century. There's also this interesting read comparing the culture between Venice and Amsterdam. I'll leave the reference in the description, but essentially, the elite of Venice were moving operations to places like Leiden University, where, if we look at the coat of arms, you can see who owns it. Now, I could continue to show you the similarities and connections, but I honestly think it's its own video, and the coat of arms of all these nations should be the proof you need, but if you want more, let's move on to the Dutch East India Company. This is another very important history we must understand if we're going to see the connection later on. After this Dutch Golden Age, which was because they merged with what was happening in Italy, eventually, the official United East India Company was started in 1602. We are told as a simple charter company for spices, but what this was simply was the first ever international global supply chain that created the biggest company that ever existed in recorded history. This again is its own video, but essentially, this is the first global company, the start of global capitalism, and you don't think the wealthy elite at the time had their hands in this? Supposedly, this company are the same people who moved around all the slaves from Africa to America. They tell us millions. Imagine how much money we're talking about here. They weren't merchants. This was literally a military power, government, and it was even an agricultural producer. You could call it an entire entity of its own, obviously with it being a corporation. But there's a dark history behind this company, and it involves population resets, taking control of industry behind the scenes, and moving people into newly renovated old.
Okay. I see it's heating up a little bit. It's heating up a little bit. Talking about the Dutch East Indian Company for a while now. Shout out
World
to
cities. To give you perspective on how rich this company really was, which again was its own entity and country, they were worth more than Apple, Google, and Facebook combined, 7.8 trillion being the first supposed global capitalism. Right, they dominated the free market. Still, this number means nothing because you have to understand how much money was in circulation back then. It doesn't mean the same now. So they were even richer than that. You don't think there's something else going on with that story? Let me give you a hint. Whenever you want to know what's going on with who is in control behind the scenes, just type in coat of arms. Why is there a headless knight, a lion as a mermaid Phoenician symbolism, a fleur-de-lis, and an upside down pentagram? Why? You have to understand that symbols are everything to these elite. That will be one of our biggest tools in this journey. The first Vanderbilt. So now let's try to trace down the first Vanderbilt. Now what we need, for some reason, they don't really teach about this in school or really any of the biographies, but the New Netherlands were a colony of the Dutch West India Company. It wasn't just New York. It was essentially the entire east coast of the United States. That's important to know for later. It was conceived by the Dutch West India Company. The confusing part is that they separated Dutch West and East into two separate companies for some reason, but they are the same entity. Remember, I told you that they were like a country. So at this time, they say the early 1600s, they began their own country in America called New Netherlands. What we do know is that early Vanderbilts were a part of aristocratic New York clubs such as the Holland Society. Here's what the Holland Society of New York has to say. Quote, in 1609, Englishman Henry Hudson sailed for the third time to the Western Hemisphere looking for a shortcut to Asia under the employ of the Dutch East India Company. He sailed into what is now New York Harbor on his famous boat, De Have, Maine, in search of profitable ventures in the New World, and to restrain the influences of rival nations, associations of Dutch America. The former colonization began about 1623. The area was called New Netherland and remained under Dutch rule for 40 years, even though the Dutch relinquished their rule to the English in 1664 and again in 1675. A half century of their heritage lived among its settlers. Their custom and traditions contributed to the new American culture and continues to be observed today. End quote. So there you go. This company, which was the biggest company at its time, would hire new explorers to search for, quote, profitable ventures. I wonder what that means. Maybe it involves stealing other lands? Are we to question whether there were already inhabitants in these areas during these times? The first Vanderbilt that history will give us is Jan Artson van der Bilt, a property owner in Long Island. It seems that his name is somewhat of a spelling error, as in many records they would shorten words, and so experts seem to agree that their family origin is the little town of Bilt in Holland. But there's more. I found Het Bilt, which is an older municipality or district of the Netherlands. Bilt is also a conservative Hollandic dialect which is spoken here. If you search De Bilt, there's some info. The Bilt houses are the headquarters to the Royal Netherlands Meteorological Institute. Quote, it is the ancestral home and namesake for the prominent Vanderbilt family of the United States. End quote. So, we know they're Dutch and they come from Holland. We're also going to cover many techniques or tricks, you could say, that the biographers play when it comes to recounting the histories of these robber baron celebrities. One recurring theme seen with the Vanderbilts is to constantly find a way to explain their mass fortune of wealth. with many few truly dissecting the story in a critical way that questions their origins. They say they always from the beginning had big families, which is understandable, but they use this as a way to explain their wealth as if each family member was constantly contributing to each other's businesses. As I was doing research for this, at some point there was a switch to English rule, but supposedly it affected them very little. In order to go any further, we have to learn more about New Netherland, which, let me ask you, did you really know about that? And if you did, be honest, how many people do you think know about this? Not too many, but this was New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and Connecticut, with small outposts in Pennsylvania and Rhode Island. But as we'll soon see, this was far larger. They are underplaying the importance of this colony in history, and you don't think it has anything to do with the Dutch West East India Company? They had $7.8 trillion. Let's remember that. They were there for 50 years, they tell us, possibly even more, 200 years. What do you think they could do in that time? Well, history tells us that when they first arrived, that progress was slow because there were issues with the natives. I wonder what that means. They say the population consisted of European colonists, Native Americans, and Africans who were imported. Another colony you probably didn't know about is New Sweden. The same founder of the Dutch West India Company started the Swedish South Company. So as you can see, this was a large project with multiple different countries, corporations involved. Also, New France, New England, and there was Nova Belgica. They try to tell you that it was just a colony from Canada to Virginia. It was not. What do you think would be stopping the largest company in the world? You also have to consider how much land the English had in 1750, as this was essentially still New Netherlands. There was a seamless switch in power. I'm saying that they're one and the same, so yes, it was the entire East Coast. Actually, it was more. So essentially, the early beginnings that we're told about Virginia and Jamestown are highly distorted. This has been in operation for a while, and there are still things that do not add up when you question further. We also have to mention how the same thing was happening with New France and New Spain. They all had their own territories or colonies that they were finding. Notice how it's called founded when a colony is started. That is because what we're seeing here is a multi-level operation coordinated by a single hand. The proof is within the coat of arms. What proof do you have that these people were truly fighting at a war with each other? The historical accounts from authorities themselves? Also, notice for some reason that there are these quotes, unclaimed lands. Why would they just stop exploring in such specific areas? They were all in cahoots. They just have to make it seem like all these different corporations were trying to fight for power. Remember, that's the illusion of big business. This was the biggest business at that time. This was Venice, the lion, the fleur-de-lis, which really is just a decorative sword. They all share the same ruler. Now, skeptics say, what proof do you have of this? You must begin your research and ask the same questions. Resources will be provided, but do you really think the people that tell us our history are just going to hold our hands and explain every single detail? No. They'll tell you what they want you to hear and inform their brothers within their heraldry. This was multiple projects, and they could have been competing against each other as different ventures. Like when a crazy tycoon starts multiple business projects under different names. You see this in movies all the time. That is what these different countries were. Spain, Britain, France, Netherlands. But who owned them? So essentially, the true origin cannot be trusted when it comes to these biographies. We'll be presenting an alternative soon, but first we must continue so that you can see how this all connects in just a moment. The story picks up with Jacob Vanderbilt, who is the supposed grandson of Jan Artson, and when he got married, his grandpa just gave him 100 acres of land, I guess. This was early Staten Island when it was known as New Dorp. They constantly like to mention that This was just a bunch of farmers at this time, just doing what they could. Yeah, for who? Who were they selling to? I wonder, were they workers of the Dutch East India Company? I would think so, since the entire country was founded by them, so they were the kings. The founders of the company, they own all the farmland. One thing that I found very interesting when looking up the Vanderbilts was this connection to the Moravian Brethren, a German evangelical sect which came from the Bohemian Protestant martyr John Huss of the early 15th century. Bohemia is another Roman created corporation. Again, why do all these countries have the same coat of arms? How are we not to conclude that they were all under one rule? Why is this lion everywhere? The double-headed phoenix? The headless knight? I know these symbols. These are all the same people. There's so much that is confusing about this history, such as duplicate names of people, weird religious names as if it's symbolism, and just very strange things in general. The first thing is that they're basically saying that they were just having babies like crazy, and that they were very specific about marriage. They would only marry the higher class people of the town, such as legislators, and in some cases, they intermarried with first cousins. So, this was a very tight-knit group. Another weird thing is that they would just randomly pick up the story when telling us this genealogy, and so now we're at Jacob Vanderbilt II, and he married a Mary. Then they have children, the seventh being Cornelius, but this is not the Commodore yet. This is the father who supposedly had a ferry service, so he was into boats as well, and he would just transport a few passengers here and there, but again, they're setting up the narrative. This Cornelius then married Phoebe, which I think there's something to the name that is weird, but she was higher class than Cornelius because her grandfather was a clergyman and her uncle was a general. Phoebe is the mother of the Commodore. Say that the family lost their money after getting married because they lost money investing in continental bonds or something, but they end up having 9 children, and this is when we get to the real beginning. The Commodore. Cornelius Vanderbilt was born from Cornelius and Phoebe, and he was the 4th born child. It is said he was born on a port in Kil van Kol, a Dutch named strait in the area. So this is where we get to the story. The story's all set up now. The father Cornelius basically failed after the revolution, which I think that may be a symbol, but they tell us that the first Cornelius was basically a failure in farming and ferrying. They called the second Cornelius Cornell, who became the eldest son when his brother Jacob died. Another Jacob, of course. One thing that is really strange is that they make emphasis on how Cornell, or Cornelius Vanderbilt, was illiterate and he was okay with it. He was hostile towards any type of learning environment, is what they say. Now, of course, they are saved by the historians because what they say is that this is one of the strategies, of course, for tricking other business competitors. Yeah, right. Why was he thinking like this from the beginning of his life? He was a very rude person. Throughout his life, he's described as being harsh, rash, and completely irrational. And as we'll soon see, this seems to be accurate. So the story goes, I'm sure some of you have heard this, but you're gonna have to try and look at this with new eyes now that we know what we know. His mother gives him $100 and he goes to get a piragua, basically a little boat, because I don't think he's doing anything bigger than that by himself. And if you type piragua, this is what it looks like, which was considered to be a clumsy sailboat. So at 16, he just takes off giving people little rides in this thing, and let's remember that $100 is like $2,500, maybe even more. So his mom just bought him a car at 16 and he was illiterate, is that right? All he had to do was promise that he would clear some acres of farmland or something. Sounds like they just wanted to give him property as well. They paint him as such a skillful and strong man. He could do the piragua all by himself, and he just went and made a humble living doing the job. Weirdly, Cornelius did special services for the War of 1812, so that means he was transporting troops in this little thing? Was he connected to the state? Well, let's see. So they also mention that Cornelius swore all the time, so they portray him as this really just down from the streets kind of guy that didn't really care about what anyone thought of him. He was just going to beat up anyone who got in his way, and he would literally get into many fistfights at an early age. At 19, he marries Sophia Johnson in 1813. Really, they were born in the exact same location, and she had a huge family because, she was his cousin. It is said that Sophia is to have had a deep connection with Phoebe. Find that all very strange, but let's continue. Okay, so that's his beginning. Now we pick up again, and now, all of a sudden, he is known as, quote, the most reliable boatman in New York City. Whoa, wait, what? We're gonna need more explanation on that. No, they say that now he's all of a sudden building schooners and operating on the, would you look at that, Hudson River. What do we know now about the Dutch origins of the Hudson River? Anyhow, he would transport passengers, cargo, fish, and fruit that he just, he was a hard worker. And so he would even just move his entire supply on shore all by himself. Now we get to the steamboats. This could be its own video, but we must cover it in this chapter as it is deeply integrated with the Vanderbilts. They tell us in mainstream history that Robert Fulton created the first steamboat, and that the first steam engine is created by Thomas Newcomen in 1712. Newcomen. Want to hear something interesting? Type in Newcomen coat of arms. You begin to see all these coat of arms in family crest, all with the same symbols. Now at first I thought this was just something with like digital stores where they would just paste old names on coat of arms for whatever reason, and people wanted to look it up and have a cool way to get a print or something. But no. Listen to this. Quote, started as a way to identify, quote, units on the battlefield. Most were family or clan related, or at least under the command of a family. So they had their own family crest, and on New Common Street on London, you can again see all the royal family symbols. I don't trust the story of steam engines. No, not at all, especially since they had the technology even in mainstream history for over 2,000 years, such as with the Aleopile, yet they didn't do anything with it until some Americans just gave it a shot in the early 1700s. Right, and you don't think the biggest company in the world at the time wasn't going to want to have anything to do with it? You don't think higher elites would want to keep certain technologies from the public? Okay, so let me get this straight. So it's okay for you to believe that UFOs are some secret technologies behind the curtain? No, this is what they don't tell you. The steamboats were not new at this time, but they want to play it as if the steamboats were just some early technology and people just laughed at them because they were these small little things that made all this noise, and they really just didn't compare when it comes to these large sailboats that quietly made their course. Or that's what they want us to believe. Because now comes the perfect opportunity to present technology to the public. So all the waters and steamboat paths were owned by Thomas Fulton at the time, through his connection with what's known as the Livingston clan, or really just a bunch of legislators. They basically got control of these areas for a short period of time. Supposedly, the Union line of steamboats were not too happy with this decision, so they got it reversed. Which is weird. Supposedly this guy Thomas Gibbons, who did the Union line from New York to Philly, helped get a law going that would put any officer in state prison for trying to arrest a citizen for steamboating in New Jersey. I have to mention this guy because he basically hires Cornelius, and they never really explain how they met or anything. Only that he just started working for Thomas in 1818. So Cornelius became the pilot of a little steamer called Mouse of the Mountain for $1,000 a year salary. So that's like $25K a year, which seems right, but just weird. I mean, wasn't he the most reliable boatman? So wasn't he like already famous enough to get like a better position at least? But anyways, the reason that Thomas Gibbons liked Cornelius is that he was, quote, skillful at avoiding writs. So basically, he got around doing taxes, which we'll see this referenced a lot. Basically, he was so skilled at avoiding taxes, Thomas gave him an even bigger boat, the Bologna, which Cornelius had a little secret chamber where he could hide in, I guess, to get away from inspection. Now, I don't really buy the whole tax avoiding thing because, as we'll see, if he was really a hard-working laborer that made his way into the business world, other tycoons at the time would have seen it and shut down the competition. Even the state would have said something. But for some reason, they just are allowing him to get away with these massive tax breaks. It also kind of debunks his whole being legitimate in his way to riches, which is strange because this is one of the main reasons he gets all his wealth. But anyways, while this is all happening, they tell us that he also had time to take over the management of a dilapidated hotel in New Brunswick called Bologna Hall. He'd drop off his own passengers from the trip, so that's fishy, but get this. He puts Sophie in charge of the place, and I guess she fixed it all up and operated the whole thing while birthing 13 children? 13 children? I mean, that's more than a dozen, guys. Just think about that, and he was making only $20,000 a year. They tell you this because they have to give you other ventures he was in to explain how he became so successful. Now the story picks up, and it's 1829. Almost a decade passes by. Now supposedly, Cornelius had enough money from his job with Thomas and the inn to basically quit the Union line, and he moved his family to New York City. Now, this doesn't really make sense, and I do think the burden of proof is on these people recounting the story to us. Now, out of nowhere, he somehow has the money to build multiple of his own steamboats. There is no explanation for this, but eventually, he had more than 100 boats and became known as the King of Long Island. Well, the explanation is that he was just a hard-working businessman. But like I said, that is the mainstream narrative. Why should we just accept blindly what we're told by the media and historians that represent these people? But not only did he have hundreds of steamboats, he was also creating better service than anyone else at that time, creating larger steamboats that were more fashionable, yet they were cheaper, and he outbeat all of his competitors. Wait, how? I thought he didn't even go to school. How is he just defeating all of the other businesses at the time? You will see throughout the story, the Vanderbilts will do whatever they can to get rid of their competition, even if that involved lowering their prices. The truth is, this scheme would never have worked. He would have had growing costs as they expanded. There's no way he could afford it by undercutting everyone else and innovating new and creative features such as more comfortable cabins. Not only that, but he for some reason never decided to insure any of his boats. They say this is the reason that made him so successful, that he just rather focus on good service and good captains rather than have anything insured. Seems like he was carefree if you ask me. He made a lot of money during the time between 1829 and 1850. He made over $30,000 a year, which equals $1 million a year. And again, this isn't an accurate conversion as this already made him one of the richest New Yorkers. So that would more accurately be even more money once you consider the amount of money in circulation. So he is now one of the wealthiest New York elite. That's the first stage of the story. The steamboat famous Staten Island story is what we'll call it. Interestingly, monitoring the lives of rich people was super popular back then, kind of like today. That's why we should really just call them celebrities. One of their supporters in the media, Moses Yale Beach, another figure that history tells us about involving this guy who was the inventor of the Associated Press. Meaning, this was literally the guy who started news in America. This was also the founder of multiple New York publishers, the first being The Sun. He said that Cornelius had $500,000. And honestly, I'm not going to keep repeating myself when it comes to these inflation calculators. I don't trust this at all when we're talking about large amounts of money. But the mainstream says this is $16 million, which made him one of the richest men in New York. So now, we get to why he's called the Commodore. Well, it's supposed to be because he was skilled at being a captain. But wait, He was just skilled at avoiding taxes, if I remember. And he was strong, but how did he become the best captain in the world? He wasn't trained or anything that we are told of, but supposedly this just means naval commander. So he was a commander, or in other words, an officer in Old Dutch. A commander for who? Supposedly, they were rich, but they were living in cramped and lowly living conditions, whatever that means. So they decided to move back to Staten Island, only because Phoebe the mother decided it was best to go there being their homeland and all. The story goes, now he's going to go and build a farm. I don't remember him getting any training in buildings or even agriculture, but okay, they built a farm between Stapleton and Tompkinsville. This is crazy. Whether you believe in Tartaria or not, this is proof of old world architecture being converted into modern buildings. Here's a picture of what this home in Stapleton looked like. Okay, so their first supposed home that they just decided to build and construct, and guess what? The architect is unknown, surprise, surprise. But this was $1 million mansion. They say, probably even more. Remember, this was 40 feet tall, the ceilings on each floor were 12 feet tall, and the rooms were very large. And this is their first piece of architecture, which is the first building or mansion that we know of that was supposedly built by these Vanderbilts. And, quote, it had a modified Gothic style, with Grecian portico and 6 enormous fluted columns. Here, Cornelius indulged in his 3 pleasures: good whiskey, cigars, and horses. Yeah, right. Okay, where did he get the inspiration behind this? Go read the biographies. Not one of them is going to explain how he went from ignorant, cursing, fist-fighting small fairy boy who then somehow became the wealthiest man in New York with a taste for classical architecture. You guys are going to take the time to explain how that happens? Look at what it is today. It's just a Chinese restaurant, and look how drastically different it looks. This is what's happening with all these ruins in downtowns. They are renovated old world buildings that have been modified for new businesses. This is just one example. That doesn't even require you to believe in Tartaria. This really happened, and look how much it was modified. Now, of course, this is if you believe the mainstream narrative. But just look at it. Old world, new world. Again, you'll have to bear with me. I'm just asking questions. So I'm assuming their whole family was living here, and very soon, the Commodore had children, and they were having husbands that the Commodore would then get jobs to basically everyone in the family, which seems to me just a family tradition from their ancestry. He was very stern, and would really just ignore most of his children. He basically hated the one who was named after him, Cornelius Jeremiah. So I guess this guy was addicted to gambling and was just a failure, and so his father called him a weakling, and then Cornelius Jeremiah ran away to California somehow. But then he was arrested on orders of his father and brought to guess where? Bloomingdale Asylum for the Insane. This seems to be the Commodore's main method for dealing with his family problems. Now his other son, William Henry, the Commodore saw somewhat of a chance in him, but he was still constantly in bad health, and so the Commodore would always make him feel bad because of it. And also, he himself never really got sick for some reason. So, William Henry was skilled at lending money, I guess, meaning he worked in the banks, and his father gave him an allowance because he was his favorite. Well, William Henry had supporters like Horace Greeley at the New York Tribune. They were deeply connected with the press, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, so here we go. Notice how we haven't mentioned Dutch in a while. It's because the story really doesn't want to emphasize it that much. But William Henry marries Maria Louisa Keesum, the daughter of a pastor of the Reformed Dutch Church. Again, another prominent member. So I guess William got into writing business letters, or I don't know, they really don't really explain it. But that he gets really ill, and this just really pisses off the Commodore, so William gets exiled from New York and had to stay in Staten Island. These parents controlled every move of their children. William Henry becomes a farmer, and this is another weird thing connecting to the last video if you haven't seen it. But basically, the soil on Staten Island was horrible, so they had to import horse poop from Manhattan in order to fertilize the soil. They never actually say it's horse poop, all they say it's fertilizer, whatever that means. So William starts his own farm with all this new soil, and his dad is like, "Oh wow, this is impressive, son." I guess the Commodore was starting to be interested in horse railways all of a sudden, and he just decided, you know what, I'm going to buy all this from my son and just use it for the street railways, right? Trying to act like they went their separate ways, and the father was just impressed, so they made a deal with each other, but William earned the Commodore's respect because he somehow got the better of the situation. What are you talking about? He's your father. He's the richest dude in New York. Of course he has the upper hand. He gives you allowance. This is just another Commodore business, but okay. They decide, let's fix the Staten Island railroad system because supposedly at the time, it had no money in it or it was in horrible condition. They tell us that this was just 13 miles and it was in horrible shape and all this stuff, but that can mean there were only 13 miles of usable tracks. Again, I think everything is up for question, even the history of these railroads which they tell us about. For example, they say from 1863 and 1869, so in less than 6 years, they built 2,000 miles of railroad across the US. Not only that, but there's evidence of railroad tracks being in America from the 1700s in Nova Scotia. This is not a new technology. Quote, from the years 1839 to 1842, he was a banking business as a clerk. This is, of course, William Henry. When he started, his salary was $150,000 per annum. In the second year, it increased to $300,000 per year. Later in the years, William's father decided to purchase his son a farm located at Newdorp. The farm was 75 acres and located between the Moravian church and the area. The farm was not so big and had to be carefully taken care of and fertilized so they were able to grow crops. There was an outcome of success with the farming. William followed his father's success in lives by the motto of hard work during the day and rest in the night. During this time, his father had exerted more control over the Long Island Railroad. William was called to reorganize the ailing organization, just like he did on the farm. He was able to turn the business into a thriving operation, making him a public figure in the family's railroad empire, just like his dad, end quote. In 1855, he lived in this old world-looking house near Stapleton that they never say whether they built or not. I'm not sure, but it looks interesting to me. In 1860, the Staten Island Railroad became William's focus. He was an appointed receiver. In 1865, he had become the vice president of the Hudson River Railway. There goes the Hudson again. Then in 1869, he became the vice president of the New York and Hudson River Railway. But how? Because of his father? Or did he do this all on his own? Okay, so now the Commodore is reaching the end of his life. His son has now helped him amass even more fortune. Now he's ready for his newest venture, but he needed investments. And supposedly, these biographers like to paint it as if, oh, this was the first time since he got that $100 investment from his mother for the Piragua. And now, this would be the first time he started looking for investors. Okay, guess what he does? He goes to England. His first trip ever outside the country, supposedly, and he goes to the Rothschilds and asks them for help. Okay, but the story goes...
Another statistic. I just wanna live in God's cubicle, far away from Lucifer. Not a slave, gold chains compliment the Mueller much. Rather see me crucified, police are the crucifix. Shoot us up and dig a ditch, this ain't nothing new to us. Murders happen every day, kids on their merry way, dying for their 21, bullets never had a name. God bless Trayvon Martin, I'm in my hoodie. Another innocent young brother who met a bully. Man, this poor world is fucked up, hard times, tough luck. Section 8 and food stamps, jobs never hired us. I'm just trying to fulfill my wish list. Don't want to be another statistic. Martin Luther King had a dream, and my niggas do too. Why Emmett Till beat and killed and gouged like a fruit. Reason why them youngins untainable as a youth. And fuck the government cause they tryna disguise truth. I send my prayers out to mankind. Not enough for graduations, but too many crimes. Pay attention as a parent, gotta peep the signs. Feeling like a book is corny, so they keep a 9. Lord bless them, got me stressing while I'm raising mine. See, in the hood, people think you won't amount to nothing. Funny, I made $1 million out of 10 cents. Word, don't want to be another statistic.
Right? But the Rothschilds decided that they would not invest without a first-hand report of the possibilities of a route. So supposedly, the Commodore just decided, nah, I'll show them. I'll do it on my own. Or at least that's what the biographers tell us. I forgot to mention, but one of the Commodore's first steamboats that he built for himself was named after him, and I wanted to show you a picture of what it looked like. Supposedly, it was designed by him, they tell us. Oh yeah? With what expertise? Look how massive this is. This is like 1847. So in 1850, he had another ship called Prometheus, which, again, you'll see this theme, all of his boats have weird names. The first one is called Bellona, which is eerily similar to Leo Belgicus. It's just a different spelling. Bellona, Leona. But anyways, now we have Prometheus, the Lightbringer. He goes and basically takes over the Nicaraguan government and somehow getting permission to establish an entirely new business in their waters, and they were just cool with it. This was a 9-day trip from New York to Greytown, which was an extremely overcomplicated route that many say was literally innavigable, or at least this is what everyone believed. So it was from New York to Greytown, then they would get transferred to Central America, then from there they were taken up the coast to California. And this is what they say was his new business venture. It was called, quote, New and Independent Line for California via Nicaragua. It brought over thousands of people who wanted to join in on the gold rush, but you really gotta think, why would the richest man in America right now, why would he want to get people to come into California and find gold? Why wouldn't he just go there in private and hire men to get all the gold himself? Is it because there is something else going on with this whole gold rush story? Maybe it's because they were repopulating these newly conquered areas, and this was a repopulation event, not a business venture offering low affordable transport across the United States. If they were really selling a gold rush experience, that ticket would be so expensive. Who's going to pay for such a long trip like that wanting to get into the gold rush? Poor families looking for the lottery? How do they have the money for such a trip? Yet they tell us thousands of people took this trip and came to California. There were also terrible steamboat tragedies, including one event that almost killed 200 passengers. So, after making a profit on that, he sells all his shares and then truly becomes one of the wealthiest people in the world. You don't think that would garner any attention? After his shares were bought, he had $11 million, they tell us, in 1853, which is worth almost $1 trillion already, maybe $500 billion, but like I said, this whole conversion process is messed up. Okay, so now we get to a really weird story. During this time, he decides that it's time for a European vacation with all of his family, so he built a special ship for this called the North Star. Okay, this was an ocean steamboat yacht, and it was the largest to ever be built for a private individual, weight of total 2,500 tons. The amenities were beyond glorious. Family staterooms, each decorated in different color combinations, green and gold, or crimson and gold for example. Berths were put with these massive heavy lace curtains. Now, I'm not sure why people believe this, as there is no evidence that this yacht existed to my knowledge. All I could find were engravings and models, but after World War I, it was supposedly given to the British and Canadian governments. So anyways, they get the family together and leave some members out for whatever reason, and they're ready to set sail, but some firemen are like, we want higher wages, and the Commodore just says nope and fires them, and then hires new people or something. I don't know, I thought he believes in hard laborers, but he's like a prince now, so he doesn't have time for arguing. Mainstream history tells us that they left Staten Island and made it to Southampton, England in less than 10 days, which was an extremely fast time, maybe even a record for its time period, especially for a newly constructed yacht. They tell us that when they arrived, the British were just clueless to what was going on. A confused reporter from the London Daily News said, quote, "He has come by train from Southampton and left his private yacht in the dock at the port. It's a monster steamer, and they basically describe it as being more magnificent than the Queen's yacht." Can't really believe this event because that would just be seen as disrespect. But no, they were invited to a soiree at the Lord Mayor of London's mansion house. They went, but the Commodore refused to make a speech. He was known for never speaking in public. Did you hear that? He was antisocial and refused to make any type of public appearances. It's important to note. Then the family set sail to St. Petersburg, and they hung out with the Grand Duke Constantine, an admiral of the Russian royalty. The story goes that this was the Commodore's first meeting with any type of royalty. No connection with any of these people at all, and they're just so impressed with this American. And you know what? They even saw them as equals. That's what the biographies say, I'm not even kidding. They visited a variety of Italian cities, another important part of their trip, in which they visited Florence, where they seem to have had a meeting with the sculptor Hiram Powers. They stopped shortly in Constantinople and returned to America, but the story says that they covered over 15,000 miles in only 58 days, or less than 2 months. Another common thing that you'll see is that there aren't too many of these expensive Gilded Age steamboat yachts. You would think that we would have hundreds preserved, but no, that's not the case. They tell us that there were 11,000 steamboats in America. That's not even considering the world, but supposedly only 5 remain, and they're built after the 1900s. So, after his luxurious trip meeting with dukes and queens, he basically gets into a dispute with the accessory transit company. Something to do with interest, but instead of suing them, the biographies say he took Vanderbiltian measures. He's quoted saying, quote, "The law is too slow. I will ruin you," end quote. Then, we all know the story. He made them bankrupt by blocking their routes. And this is the guy, so we're supposed to trust this guy. He then sold his New York to California shipping line and made a lot of money, around $20 million, but most of it came from his ability to manipulate his stock. Okay, so the story picks up again, and now they're living in a townhouse in Manhattan because the Commodore is super focused on business, but Sophia's like, "I don't like New York, I want to move back to Staten Island." But the Commodore says, "How dare you question me," and sends her back to the asylum. Also, in every one of these cases, it's always other people that come to the rescue of these family members. In this case, Sophia was saved by her mother-in-law, Phoebe, which was one of the last deeds before she died. Remember what I said about their connection. She was then buried in the Moravian Cemetery in Staten Island. Why? There's no mention on why they're still connected with the Moravians. Isn't he just a hard-working businessman who started from the ferry business? What is his association with the Moravians? This also connects with the Astors, which is its own story, but they're all descended from these same royal families. I can keep going, there is more, but to finish off the history of the Commodore, his final moves were essentially the railroads. But there's an interesting story behind this. Supposedly, he was hesitant to get started or something because he was in an accident 30 years prior where he almost died and punctured a lung. Not sure about that, but okay. They basically want you to think that, oh, he was hesitant. He was scared of big old bad trains, that he's still being illiterate referred to as, quote, "those things that go on land," end quote. So I guess he didn't even refer to them as trains, and he was afraid of them. But eventually, he conquers his fears, and then he just started becoming an investor in small individual railroads from different cities. Slowly but surely, creating his monopoly so that he could connect all of them to create an everlasting transportation empire. Doesn't that sound familiar? Before that, he supposedly accomplished that vision through mass manipulation of his stocks, and with all this money at age 70 now, he's still not done, which, by the way, there's only one photo of this guy taken in the Civil War, they say, but now he has control all of New York, Harlem, and Hudson Line, and then he went for the New York Central Railroad. His final big move was continuing to expand with New York to Chicago. This new conglomerate revolutionized rail operations by standardizing procedures and timetables, increasing efficiency and decreasing travel and shipment times. Or at least, that's what they want us to hear. They tell us that out of nowhere, the Commodore became interested in the occult, and after Sophia's death, he sought the help of the Chaplin sisters, two mediums that could allow him to communicate with her. He ended up just thinking they were fakes. However, this is actually how he met his second wife, their distant cousin named Frank Armstrong. Okay, so now we're getting into train stations, which this is 1870s, so no pulleys, and they're building these massive brick train stations. Not only that, hold up, he buys all these properties on 42nd Street, which, look at this old photo. I really can't find too much info on these buildings. If anyone knows more, please do tell, but he basically bought all these properties here and then built the train station, and there are barely any photos of this in the process involved. History portrays him as a philanthropist at the end of his life, just giving away most of his wealth to charity is what they tell us. Right, like Vanderbilt University? Look at this place. They say it was founded in 1873. After he just randomly donated $1 million to a Methodist bishop in Tennessee. Do I sense a Moravian connection again? So in 1876, he became ill, began a 8-month death march. A death march? They say he literally yelled at his doctors, and he died on January 4th, 1877, leaving his massive estate, almost worth $100 million, over to William Henry, which we learned about earlier. Now, when it comes to his estate, we're going to cover this in a later section, since for some reason, it's glossed over in the main biographies. But this money was basically split up between the whole family. And then, that's the end of the Commodore. Asheville Underground and the New York Connection. We continue by moving right into Asheville, as this is deeply connected with this whole story. Yet, this connection is only really known by locals. So Asheville is a city in North Carolina. Asheville, which is what they call a boom town, or one of the most well-preserved America boom cities, or at least that's what they want you to think, because I have some serious questions. But before that, let's read this history, because it really did not get started until 1880. Before then, it was just a small town in mainstream history. It started as... Before that, at least that's what they want you to think, because I have some serious questions. But before that, let's read this history, because it really did not get started until 1880. Before then, it was just a small town in mainstream history. It started as Cherokee Nation, which they have many legends of giants too, as mentioned in previous videos. But then, the first town of Asheville was named Morristown. Travelers came and made trails and stuff, but there was really nothing going on yet. That all changed when the elite from New York came rushing in during the 1880s, so they tell us, and just started building all of Asheville in like 20 years. To put it into perspective, there was less than 10,000 residents, probably even fewer in 1890. Yet, they start building all these massive brick buildings and palaces, and these are no easy feat. Alright, for example, let's just look at the Freemason building. They say this was built in 1909. People pass it every day, never asking or questioning this narrative, but there are many buildings just like this that I could show you, as we've been here and walked around and seen all the buildings. But let me tell you what I think is the best evidence behind there being something else going on with Asheville. Underground Asheville. explain why buildings are going completely underground, several feet under ground level. This became apparent as this is actually in all the stores, or most of them. Go visit downtown. And in many of these buildings, they have stairs that go down to the basement where there's more area, right? And you can clearly see that this is a lower level of an older building. So let's explore this idea. Now, we have to understand that these theories that we're going to deal with, they revolve around this topic of trust. Because remember, this whole video is a journey of someone who doubts the mainstream narrative. So this is all about what information should we trust, which information is a cover-up, and so on. So what you will see with these underground sections of the city is that they've been labeled as some prohibition scheme where they dug down or something and created these passageways for selling in secret. I don't buy that story at all, but okay, let's start with that.
Underground tunnels is tonight's Ask 13. News 13's Frank Verboni is with us. And Frank, could there be truth to the rumors?
Well, Tammy, the questions about a network of underground tunnels in Asheville have been around for years. This one came from Josh Settle, who asked, why are there entrances to tunnels under Asheville, and what were those tunnels used for? Could Asheville be keeping dark secrets deep underground?
This is the Sanborn map.
At the old Buncombe County Genealogical Society,
Now, you can tell from the map,
insurance maps from 1925 do show a tunnel.
and that is an underground tunnel.
That tunnel below Wall Street is commonly known as Rat Alley, a service entrance for businesses on Patton Avenue.
This is a connector to a network of tunnels underneath the city of Asheville.
But Tom Israel believes it may have been connected to this.
And there are other entry points into this tunnel system throughout downtown. Some still exist, some don't.
Israel and his family are owners of Pack Tavern on Spruce Street. They discovered the double locking steel doors during renovations and are certain this was used during Prohibition.
We understand that they would store liquor in this building during that period and use this tunnel system to distribute it.
The old Hayes Hobson building was first built in 1907 and was originally a lumber supply company.
Let's see.
Sanborn maps do not show any of the underground network other than Rat Alley, but many in town remember the stairways to underground restrooms at Pack Square. This photo from 1929. And another from the 60s when they were later segregated.
And I know the access to those subsurface restrooms were also an access point to this tunnel system.
Asheville City Plan.
A book in the UNCA Special Collections Library.
We have suggested that a tunnel or subway be built.
By author John Nolan did suggest going underground, but the city plan published in 1922 makes no mention of the network. Historians say that would make sense if the tunnels were used for the illegal liquor trade.
You probably would not let people know about those tunnels.
The brick arch is very interesting.
Unlocking Asheville's underground past.
At some point in time, it was blocked off.
Closing the door on the city's secret tunnels.
Okay, so again, that's the mainstream story. And notice how he said all over downtown. Oh, really? And are you guys leaving out any information? How many of you are from Asheville? Some locals know this, but there used to be a subway in Asheville. This is some very deep stuff. It's hard to find information on this, but they just say it was an abandoned project, right? I don't believe them. They had these entrances all over town, and supposedly this was purposely blocked up by the officials. The Flatiron Building features a deep basement, which seems to be one of the stops connected to this tunnel system. Remember, this was covered up by these wealthy families in the early 1900s. And over time, their connections and whatnot took over the city, becoming the local officials. This stuff is not easily accessible, and you are most likely to hear it from a local legend. No one knows the answer. It's almost as if it's lingering on everyone's mind, but no one knows, so we just all accept the mainstream history. But deep down, we know that there has to be something more. There have been rumors of there being secret passages beneath the Masonic temple since its supposed construction in 1915. This is a well-known legend, and eventually, a paranormal investigator went to investigate with thermal sensors, and he did indicate where a tunnel would be near their own private bowling alley. But it would require excavation, which the members won't allow. So now it's basically blocked off because so many people tried to go see it. The local historians are just a bunch of skeptics, saying that no, these are just a few tunnels, prohibitions, blah blah blah. Man, these historians have no clue how to think. They just read the books and they have rote memory. That's not thinking. That's not comparative research. That's just mindlessly parroting the mainstream narrative. There's plenty of physical proof that shows multiple underground chambers in Asheville that everyone can see for themselves. Why would there be a door in a basement?
Throughout the 20th century, different businesses and their owners would renovate and modify this old building.
What did you think the first time you walked in this building?
How we're going to do this. Because it was cut up into all kinds of small offices. Before this, it was the city and county parole offices. So everybody had an office, and all that had to be torn out and got down to the bare minimum. It's come a long way since it's when we started this project to become a restaurant today.
It turned out the owners of these old businesses decades ago would not rip out any old renovations. They'd simply add layers of construction.
Sandblasted the original brick. We took up 3 layers of hardwood floor to get to the original.
Literally 100 years of, I guess, progress rolled back to the original state.
Nature.
And the developers didn't realize the significance of what they'd find in the basement and how it would spark their creativity.
This just kind of jumped out at us. This giant tunnel in the basement made its history clear.
The Pax Tavern basement features an old entranceway to a tunnel system that was used to run bootleg liquor underground between downtown Asheville buildings.
I just want to say this. Don't they always talk about the Underground Railroad? That was a place that wasn't a place. An Underground Railroad. To do what? Exactly. They say that's how you niggas got the freedom, through the Underground Railroad. Or was it you niggas they was even talking about?
The entrance features 2 heavy iron doors. Stuart Coleman gave us a tour.
This tunnel here, it had access to a series of tunnels on the other side, and it had a double locking mechanism that locked.
You lock inside.
You lock yourself in and you lock other people out.
So these tunnels, were they really a secret to the authorities, or were they a secret officially? Everyone knew what was going on down here.
They were not secret because they run even under the Masonic temple, and they run up here in front of the Biltmore building, and they discovered them in the park.
It's not that. Shit done froze on a nigga.
When they were redoing the vitalization of the park, there was a series of 4 tunnels that crossed over each other, and they were severed also by utilities.
So it's kind of a similar video, but did you hear what that guy said? What would be the implications of there being tunnels that go all the way to the Biltmore? So this is what they tell us. They just built this whole city, which is completely on a hilly landscape with all these interconnected underground tunnel systems, basements with doors, with all these.
mute.
Interconnected underground tunnel systems, basements with doors, a supposed subway project. How the heck did they do that in 1880 in such a period, and no one's gonna ask any questions? They asked the guide about the sewage systems, which they weren't even gonna cover. They were talking about the bathrooms and how they were originals, which I can believe, but he said there were two things that the Biltmores didn't have: AC and waste management. Things that the Biltmores didn't have: AC and waste management. They used chamber pots, and the few bathrooms they had were simply dumped straight into the river. So let me get this straight. George Washington Vanderbilt decides that this is the perfect country home. He's basically going to set up this estate for inviting wealthy New York elites. And then basically, they just dump their shit in nature. And no, it's not for fertilizing. They just had no other method. Yet they can build castles unlike any other workforce in America, and it still can't be replicated today. Remember, 1,000 men with pulleys. Why can't someone today hire that and make it happen? You don't think something was lost? Okay, so they buy all this land, build this estate. Remember how much land this was? You really think this is just a country home purchase? Which I think it's obviously, even from a mainstream historical point of view, that this was set up to be some type of a lodge and nature resort for a wealthy elite. Get this. After all this effort, it actually failed. This whole idea was not a successful venture at first, and in fact, the only thing that kept it afloat was the dairy farm. Fun little fact that I learned as I was getting the water from the cafe. The tour guide brought this up, and basically, they can support the business, so they depended on this dairy business. The Biltmore was essentially a roadside attraction. There was nothing over here, less than 10,000 residents. Why? The story says that they moved here because of the mountain air would heal George Vanderbilt's mother, but this is just what they repeat to us. Why aren't people rushing over here on your grandparents' train? There should have been plenty of business for this, yet it failed, and there were actually many critiques at the Biltmore who did not enjoy their stay. So basically, the building started to deteriorate. Wallpaper was falling off, and it wasn't until really the 1950s that major renovations started happening. Now they say that all these people came and visited, and they had all these journals of people and their quotes and media. As the President Theodore Roosevelt visited the Biltmore, and even his daughter Alice, which they had like this whole story that takes 30 minutes on a tour, and they tell you all about it. You know where we get all these events from? The media, the press. Who started the Associated Press again? Also, did you know that on the Biltmore estate, the Shiloh neighborhood included approximately a dozen former slaves? It included several homes dotted along what once was the land of their former owner, a church, and a cemetery. When Vanderbilt bought this property, he paid $1,000 to the church. Okay, so wait, they're telling you there were slaves on that property, and there used to be a church there. Okay. Now, we must cover what I consider to be more constructed figures, known as the two architects behind the Biltmore house, which dives us into a deep topic, too immense for a single video, which involves what I consider to be fake architects. Richard Morris Hunt was also the architect for other houses by the Vanderbilts, designed this house in a chateau-esque style, which seems to be based on Wadison Manor. Keep that in mind for later, but they have many similar features. This is also the Rothschild's vacation home. Remember, supposedly, their families had nothing in common, but they visit each other and stuff. The other architect, Frederick Law Olmsted, now, we'll come back to Hunt in a second, but Olmsted is a big deal. He's responsible for not only Central Park and many other sites, he's also the architect behind the Chicago's World's Fair. The story goes that they searched and searched for a land to hold the Chicago's World's Fair, as these events were huge cultural and technological leaps in mankind, so they knew they were a big profit. Also indicating that these architects, or supposed ones, they were a business. I'll show you what I mean in a second. They say they went to the France exhibition, learned what they needed, came back, settled with Jackson Park's site, and you'll always hear this story that people were pessimistic. They doubted them, like in every single one of these biographies. But these men who built America, no, they were there to prove everyone wrong, and that anyone would do anything if they just worked hard and all this stuff. But yeah, they were having a meeting in 1891 trying to discuss whether or not they could really build this all in 2 years, and they just wanted everyone to be well aware that they were confident. Even if this is plaster, there are no construction photos of this process. Maybe a few close-up ones with some scaffolding already there, but that's all. They're already in their final stages. That may be convincing for the masses, not for me. How do they make these embankments? How do they dig this all out? I don't care if this is just plaster and wood. If it's so easy to just buy all these cheap supplies and make something like this, then why has it never truly been replicated? This would have been a massive business. This is far too big of a project to complete regardless of the resources used, and these wealthy elite building these places had more than enough opportunity to document everything they were doing. I mean, we're talking about people with trillions in wealth. They had the tech. Why do we see high quality photos of the fair? Yet 2 years ago, they don't have detailed construction photos of their mansions? If you're one of these exposure people and or the tech for photography wasn't there, that's the mainstream narrative. This is not new tech, and these world fairs were most likely places where old world technology was finally re-engineered and presented to the public for the first time. This was their way of releasing new information to the public in terms of innovation. You don't think there would be propaganda involved? There's another thing that I don't get. Everybody just trusts all these people blindly, and yet, who are we talking about? We're talking about the wealthy New York elite who had started other business ventures, essentially making partnerships with these artists, sculptors, and architects, which I do think there are some high talent hired, but overall, these are all different businesses. Olmsted was one of their biggest corporations when it comes to these architectures. This dude was connected with Yale and basically was trained to be this architect. Like many of the celebrities today, these artists would go through thorough training and then be sent around the world in order to prepare. Seems that he had help, if you ask me, because he's the guy who's responsible for over 500 commissions. How much money do you think this is? 100 public parks, 200 private estates, 50 residential communities, and 40 different colleges? Now that's insane, and you'll see this with many of these different architects. But remember, we're covering the alternative here. You have to think that if there was something going on, and for just one moment, let's suppose there were people in America far earlier than we're told. Perhaps when the Europeans came to explore, there were already cities here. This is not out of the question just yet, and when you think about it, they would have some system-wide cover-up for this, especially the leftover ones that were then reserved for the elite. Okay, so back to Richard Morris Hunt. So in the biographies, it doesn't want to go over exactly how all these different family members got into all these mansions. It seems to have happened right when William Henry died, or right when the Commodore died. William Henry bought all these supposedly, and then they were given to his children. But Richard Morris is the same architect behind the building we mentioned in the last video, the Petit Chateau, or William K. Vanderbilt's house, another young bachelor who was going to get a bunch of money from his father, William Henry. They never explain why William Henry was into Gothic architecture. Sure, you can say that George Washington Vanderbilt learned this from the books. Okay, that's one thing, but how did William Henry get involved in this? There's just not enough information about Fifth Avenue, and I found some early pictures that show clearly these buildings have lower levels that go below the ground. Sure, you can make the argument that they're basements, but why are there windows going below? And how difficult would it be to build this way? Furthermore, why did they decide to demolish it? You know how much money a place like this could have made? This was another palace for princes. This guy is also responsible for the breakers, the Marble House, the lower section of the Statue of Liberty, which I find very hard to believe in the photos of France because it does seem to be a composite if you ask me. But we continue. He built the Ochre Court, New York Tribune Building, Bluth High School, which seems to be way too much for a high school, but essentially they're saying they built hundreds, if not thousands of these structures in less than a 20-year period. They had at least 10 mansions in New York, many of which were destroyed. They owned all of Fifth Avenue, and we aren't going to start asking questions on how and why this was done. There's barely any photographic evidence for their claims from this, and this is 1870 to 1890 time period. And all of a sudden, 1890, they start deciding that they're going to take stages of the construction process, but even then it's very limited and only a select few are shown as if they are chosen to be presented. You must think, if these were truly philanthropists and they had so much wealth, why didn't they develop a better system for preserving photography? They preserved books, tapestries, maps, yet they could not preserve photographs for just 50 years so that people could copy them later? I think they're hiding something. So yeah, these are the people that they tell us built the Biltmore. Yet, with almost all these figures, there's usually only one real photograph of them. Maybe two, but rarely. And then you get these portraits of who they were and a background story, and we just eat it up. No one asks any questions. Of course, I'm talking pre-1890. Once George Washington comes in, he was the new young trillionaire. Now, these were the true Kardashians because even though I was making that analogy earlier, it actually really applies now because George Washington, and I swear saying that over and over again just seems so weird, but George Washington Vanderbilt basically built the Biltmore to have as his own bachelor's pad. They say it was originally for hunting, yet it ended up being used kind of like a frat house. The elites of their club would come for what they say was an extravagant experience, and also, they tell us that there were like only 3 people living in there for a certain period of time after it started to fail, right? Because come to find out, people don't want to take this massive long journey to the middle of nowhere. They had many guests, they tell us, but I'm not sure if I buy it because they would have been successful and the place wouldn't have been deteriorated and needed renovation in the 50s. So now, I'm going to explain my experience going to the Biltmore with Moon. And after explaining all that, I'm going to give you multiple possible explanations, and you can decide for yourself what you like the best. Okay, so now that was a...
All right, tribe. That is all I can spare for today. I hope that y'all enjoyed today's stream. Make sure y'all bang that like button, share the video out, consider supporting the channel if you enjoyed today's stream. And shit. I hope y'all have a great rest of the day. I'll see y'all tomorrow, same time, same place. Peace.
smoking delirious.